Today, we're venturing deep into the heart of Texas, where the land is as vast as its legends and just as terrifying. From abandoned asylums and haunted hotels to lonely backroads that whisper your name, get ready to explore 6 haunted Texas sites that have terrified visitors for years and will make you question what's real and what's lurking just beyond the horizon. But before we begin, here's something strange. Most viewers make one huge mistake: they leave without subscribing. And by doing so, they miss out on the creepiest, spine-tingling tales that only the bravest dare to hear. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button now, because tonight's just the beginning, and the terror waiting in the darkness is far from over. So, where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Let me know in the comments, because here, the night is only getting started, and the horror is waiting to unfold. Now, let's dive into the darkness. My name's Jesse Ortiz. I'm from Kennedy, and I work as a night maintenance engineer at the Emily Morgan Hotel in San Antonio. That's what they call it. On the paperwork, maintenance engineer, but really, I'm just the guy who fixes toilets when they clog at 2 in the morning and resets the breaker when some tourist from Wisconsin dries their hair while running the microwave and the AC at the same time. I've been doing it 3 years come this August, and I used to like the night shift. I really did. The money's better. You don't have to deal with the front desk drama, and most nights, it's just you and the hum of the ice machine on every floor and the sound of your own boots on that marble lobby floor that they polish so much you could see your face in it, if you ever wanted to look that hard at yourself. I used to eat dinner at the Waffle House on Houston Street before my shift. Same booth every night. Same waitress, who calls me Mr., even though she's probably 10 years older than me. I'd get the Texas cheesesteak melt with extra onions and a sweet tea, so sweet it makes your teeth hurt, and I'd sit there and read the paper. The actual paper. Not my phone, because my mama taught me to read that way, and old habits die hard. Then I'd park in the garage on Bowie and walk the 2 blocks. Punch in at 11:30. Get my radio from Lewis at the front desk. He's the night manager, and he'd always say the same thing. "Quiet night, Jesse. Knock on wood." And I'd say yes, sir, and head to the maintenance closet on the 7th floor where we keep the cart with all the tools and the spare key cards, and the logbook where you write down every single thing you do. Every light bulb changed, every complaint responded to, every time you had to go into a guest room because the plumbing's older than my daddy and it decides to act like it. That first night I'm going to tell you about started just like that. I remember because I was wearing my gray work shirt, the one with the stain on the left sleeve from the time a pipe burst in 614 and I didn't get out of the way fast enough, and I had my black Dickies on and my steel toes that I'd just oiled the night before, so they were still a little slick on those marble floors. I had my lunchbox, the metal one my wife got me for our anniversary. It's got the Texas flag on it, and inside was a bologna sandwich with mustard and 2 slices of American cheese, a bag of those Fritos that are shaped like little scoops, and a thermos of coffee I make at home, half regular, half decaf. Because if I do full caffeine, my hands shake too much when I'm trying to fix those little tiny screws they put in everything nowadays. I punched in at 11:32. "Talk to Luis," he said. "Quiet night. Knock on wood." I said, "Yes, sir," and I took the service elevator up to 7. The service elevator is slow. Man, I mean slow, like it's thinking about whether it really wants to go to that floor. And it makes this noise. This groaning noise that you get used to after a while, but that night it seemed louder than usual. I told myself it was just because the hotel was mostly empty. We were at like 40% occupancy. Some slow Tuesday in March. Storm season coming up, but not quite here yet. And when there's less people, there's less noise to cover up the sounds the building makes when it's just being itself. I got off on 7, walked down the hall past the guest rooms. 701, 703, 705, all the way down to the end where the maintenance closet is, right next to the ice machine that was humming like it always does. this low thrum that you feel in your teeth more than you hear it. I unlocked the closet, flipped on the light, which is just one of those bare bulbs that hangs from the ceiling, and I checked the logbook. Luis had written in his neat little printing that there was a leak reported in 810. Something about the bathroom faucet dripping, and could I check it out before morning because the guest in 808 had complained about the sound. I wrote down that I'd received the work order at 11:47, and I grabbed my tool belt and I headed for the stairs. I don't take the guest elevators unless I have to. They got cameras in those and I don't like being watched when I'm just doing my job. And plus, the stairs are faster if you're only going up one floor. The stairwell in that hotel, it's got these concrete steps with metal edges, and the walls are painted this cream color that's supposed to be warm but just looks yellow under the emergency lights. And there's a smell, this kind of old smell, like plaster and dust and that chemical they use to clean up after somebody's been smoking in a non-smoking room. I went up to 8, pushed through the door, and the hallway was dark. Not totally dark, because there's always those little night lights they put along the baseboards. But the overhead lights were off, which was weird because they're supposed to stay on all night. That's hotel policy. Something about safety and liability. I figured maybe housekeeping had turned them off by accident when they were done for the day. Or maybe there was a breaker trip somewhere. So I made a mental note to check the panel later, and I walked down the hall toward 810. The carpet on 8 is this deep blue color with a pattern of gold keys on it. Little repeat keys. And it's pretty new. They replaced it 2 years ago. But that night it looked darker than I remembered. Like the blue was more black. And I thought maybe my eyes just hadn't adjusted from the bright lights in the stairwell. I got to 810, which is about halfway down the hall on the right side, and I knocked. I always knock, even when I know the room's supposed to be empty, just in case. And I waited, and I knocked again, and I called out maintenance. And when nobody answered, I used my master keycard. The little light turned green. I heard the lock click, and I pushed the door open. The room was dark inside, which was normal. Housekeeping always turns everything off when they finish. But there was this smell. I can't describe it right. It wasn't a bad smell. Not like sewage or mold or anything. It was clean. Too clean. Like when you walk into a hospital room and they've just mopped everything with that disinfectant that smells like it's trying to cover up something worse. I turned on the bathroom light first, because that's where the leak was supposed to be. And I saw the faucet, and it wasn't dripping. It was running. Not full blast, but a steady stream. And the sink was full. Water just pouring over the edge onto the floor. And the floor was wet. But not just wet. It was flooded. Like an inch of water everywhere. And I could see it seeping under the door into the main room. I cursed under my breath. Not a real cuss word, but you know, one of those sounds you make when you realize this is going to be a whole thing. And I waded in there, water going over the tops of my boots, and I turned the faucet off. It turned easy. Too easy. Like it had just been waiting for me to do it. Then I went to turn on the main room lights. And that's when I heard it. A click. Like a door closing. But soft. Careful. I froze. I called out, "Hello, maintenance?" Thinking maybe a guest was in there. Maybe they hadn't left. Maybe they were sleeping or something. But there was no answer. I listened. And I heard this sound. This shuffling sound. Like somebody in socks moving across carpet. And I told myself it was just the water draining somewhere. Or the building settling. Or maybe a mouse. Though we don't get many mice. Not with the exterminators coming every month. I turned on the lights. And the room looked normal. 2 queen beds, both made up tight with those white comforters they use. The TV mounted on the wall. The desk by the window. The little couch thing under the TV. Nothing out of place. Except the window was open. Not all the way. Just a crack. Like 2 inches. And I know housekeeping doesn't open windows. That's policy. And I know maintenance doesn't either. And guests sometimes do, but they usually close them when they leave. I went over to close it, and as I got near, I felt this cold air coming in. But it wasn't just cold. It was heavy. like it had weight to it. And I could smell that hospital smell again, stronger now. And I heard something outside. Not traffic, we were on the 8th floor. There's no traffic noise that high up. Not really. It was this humming, this low humming. Almost like the ice machine, but deeper. And I looked out the window, down at the street, and everything looked normal. The lights, the cars, the Alamo across the way, all of it, but the sound was still there. And it felt like it was coming from the building itself, from the walls. I closed the window, locked it, and I went back to the bathroom to start mopping up. That's when I saw the boot print, just one, in the water on the bathroom floor, right next to the tub, and it was pointed toward the door, like someone had been standing there watching me. And it wasn't my boot print. I know my boots, I know the pattern, I oil them myself. And this was different. This was a smoother sole, like a dress shoe, and it was smaller, maybe a size 8 or 9, and I'm a 12. I looked at it for a long time. I swear to God I did. And I tried to think of every person who'd been in that room that day. Housekeeping, the guest who reported the leak, maybe Luis, but Luis wears sneakers, white ones, and housekeeping wears those non-slip shoes, and this was definitely a dress shoe. I took a picture of it with my phone. I don't know why. Just to have it, I guess. To show somebody. Though I never did show anybody. And I started mopping. I used all the towels from the bathroom, every single one, and I wrung them out in the tub. And the water kept coming. Not from the faucet, but from under the sink, like the pipe had burst. But when I looked under there with my flashlight, everything was dry as a bone. The towels would soak up water. I'd wring them out, and I'd turn around and there'd be more water. Same amount, like it was just appearing on the floor. And I know that sounds crazy. I know it does, but that's what was happening. Man, I'm telling you. I worked on that room for 2 hours. 2 hours, and finally at like 2 in the morning I just gave up. I wrote in the logbook that I had addressed the leak and that the room would need to be re-cleaned in the morning. And I locked the door, and I went back to the maintenance closet. And I sat there, and I didn't move for a while. I just sat on that little stool we got in there, and I listened to the ice machine hum, and I tried to make sense of what just happened. I told myself it was a plumbing issue, some weird pressure thing, some backflow, something explainable. But I kept thinking about that boot print, and that humming, and that smell. I didn't eat my sandwich that night. I just threw it away when I punched out at 7:30. I didn't tell Luis anything when I gave him back the radio. He said, "Quiet night, Jesse?" And I said, "Yes, sir. Quiet night." And I went home. I live in this little apartment off Bandera. Used to be a motel itself. The Bandera Inn. Now it's just efficiency apartments for people who work service jobs. And I showered for a long time, longer than usual. And I could still smell that hospital smell, like it was in my nose, like it had soaked into my skin. I slept, but not good. I kept waking up thinking I heard that humming, that deep humming. And I'd look around my apartment, and everything would be normal, but I'd still feel it. This pressure, this weight on my chest, like something was sitting there just watching me breathe. The second night, I did the same routine. Waffle House, Texas cheesesteak melt, sweet tea, paper. I punched in at 11:33. Talked to Luis. He said, "Quiet night, knock on wood." I said, "Yes, sir." Took the service elevator up to 7. But this time, when I got off, the ice machine wasn't humming. It was silent. Completely silent. And that was wrong. Man, that was more wrong than anything from the night before. Because that ice machine never stops. It's like a heartbeat for the whole floor. And when it's quiet, you notice everything else. I stood there for a minute, just listening. And I heard this other sound, this ticking, like a clock. But we don't have clocks in the halls, just in the rooms. And this was coming from the ceiling, from the fluorescent light fixture. I went to the maintenance closet, unlocked it, and the logbook was open. I always close it. Always. It's habit. But it was open to the page where I'd written about 810, and there was a new entry underneath mine, in handwriting I didn't recognize. It just said, check 810 again. That was it. No signature, no time, just those 4 words. I thought maybe Luis had written it, or maybe housekeeping had come up after I left and saw something. But it didn't look like Luis's writing. His is all block letters and neat. This was loopy, cursive almost, like an old person's writing. I didn't write down that I was going. I just grabbed my tool belt, and I went. The hallway on 8 was dark again. Overhead lights off, and I didn't even question it this time. I just walked down to 810, and I knocked again, and I used my key. The smell hit me right away. That hospital smell, but stronger. Like someone had dumped a whole bottle of that disinfectant right on the carpet. The room was dark except for the light coming in from the hallway behind me. And I reached for the switch. But before I could flip it, I heard that shuffling again. That sock on carpet sound, and then a voice. It wasn't a word. Not really. It was more like a hum. Like that humming from the window but made by a person. Or something like a person. And it was coming from the bathroom. I called out, "Maintenance, I'm here to check the leak." And the humming stopped. And there was this silence that was worse than any sound. This heavy silence that felt like it was pushing on my ears. I turned on the lights, and the room was exactly like I'd left it. Beds made, window locked, but the bathroom door was closed. I know I'd left it open. I always leave doors open when I finish a room. It's policy, fire safety or something, but it was closed, and I could see water seeping out from under it, just a little line of water coming across the carpet. I walked over, and my boots squished. The carpet was wet again, and I opened the bathroom door, and the water was back. Same amount, same flood, and the faucet was running again. That same steady stream, and the sink was overflowing. I turned it off, and as I did, I saw something in the mirror. Not a person, not exactly, but a shape, a shadow that was darker than it should have been, standing right behind me, and I spun around, and there was nothing there, just the empty bathroom. But when I looked back at the mirror, my reflection was wrong. It was me, but it wasn't looking at me. It was looking to the side, like something else had its attention, and I waved my hand, and my reflection waved. But it was a second late, like there was a delay, and I know mirrors don't work that way. I know that, but that's what I saw. I backed out of the bathroom, and I heard that ticking sound again. But it was inside the room now, coming from the TV, which was off, but I could hear it. This steady tick, 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 and then the humming started again, and it was coming from the window. That same deep hum. And I went over, and the window was locked, but it was vibrating, like the glass was vibrating with the sound. I put my hand on it, and it was cold, so cold it burned. And I pulled back, and there was a handprint on the glass, a perfect handprint, but it was on the outside, and we were 8 floors up. I stood there, man. I stood there for I don't know how long, just staring at that handprint, and the ticking got louder, and the humming got deeper, and I could feel it in my chest, like my heart was trying to match the rhythm, and I had to get out. I left the bathroom like it was. I left the water. I left everything, and I walked out of that room, and I closed the door, and I locked it, and I stood in that dark hallway, and I could hear the humming still, coming from inside 810, but also from the rooms on either side, 808 and 812, like it was spreading. I went back to the maintenance closet, and I wrote in the logbook. I wrote, "Unable to resolve leak in 810. Recommend plumber." And I signed it, and I dated it. And I sat on that stool, and I didn't move for the rest of my shift. I just sat there, listening to the silence, because the ice machine was still off. And I realized I couldn't hear the hum of the building anymore. I couldn't hear the AC units or the plumbing or any of the normal sounds. It was like the whole floor had gone quiet, like it was holding its breath, and I was holding mine too. When the sun started coming up, when I could see light through the little window in the closet door, the ice machine kicked back on. Just like that. And the humming started again, but it was the normal humming, the one I'm used to, and I could hear the AC whirring to life, and everything sounded normal again. I punched out at 7:31, and Louise said, "See you tomorrow, Jesse." And I said, "Yes, sir." But I knew I wasn't coming back. I knew it even then. I went home, and I slept, but not really. I kept waking up to that sound, that deep humming, and I'd look at my phone, and I'd have these pictures I didn't remember taking. Pictures of my apartment, pictures of my truck, pictures of the inside of my closet, all time-stamped at like 3 in the morning, and I don't sleepwalk, man. I've never sleepwalked in my life. The third night, I didn't go to work. I called in sick. First time in 3 years. And I told Luis I had the flu. And he said, "Feel better, Jesse." And I hung up, and I sat in my apartment with all the lights on, and I listened to the traffic on Bandera, and I tried to forget about that handprint, that boot print, that humming. But around midnight, my phone buzzed, and it was a text from a number I didn't have saved. And it just said, "Check 810. That's it. No name, nothing else. I deleted it. I blocked the number. But an hour later it came again. Same message, from a different number. And then another, and another. 5 texts, in 5 hours. All saying the same thing. All from different numbers, and I turned my phone off. I pulled the battery out. That's how old my phone is. You can still do that. And I put it in a drawer, and I sat there in my living room, and I heard it. That humming. It was coming from outside my apartment, from the hallway. And I got up, and I looked through the peephole, and the hallway was empty, but I could see the light fixture, and it was flickering, and I could hear that ticking sound, that clock ticking sound. And I backed away, and I sat back down, and I didn't move until the sun came up. When it got light, I looked in that drawer where I'd put my phone, and the battery was back in it. I hadn't put it back. I know I hadn't, but there it was, snapped in place, and the phone was on, and the background had changed. It used to be a picture of my wife. We split up last year, but I kept the picture because I still love her, I guess. But now it was just black. Pure black. And when I tried to change it back, the phone wouldn't let me. I took it to the Cricket store down the street, and the kid there, he couldn't figure it out either. He said the software was corrupted, but he looked at me weird while he said it, like he could tell there was something else wrong, something I wasn't saying. I told him to just wipe it. Factory reset. And he did. And the picture came back. My wife's picture. But now she wasn't smiling in it. She was looking away, just like my reflection in that mirror, looking at something I couldn't see. I know that picture, man. I know every pixel of that picture. And she was smiling in the original. I swear to God she was. I paid the kid $20 and I left. And I went home and I threw the phone in the trash. I got a new one. Prepaid, new number. Didn't give it to anyone but my mama and my sister. And for 3 days, it was fine. No texts, no calls, nothing. Then on the 4th day, I got a text, and it was from my own number, the old one, the one I'd thrown away, and it said, "You still need to check 810. I blocked it, but the messages kept coming, from numbers that don't exist, from my own number, from Luis's number, from my mama's number, all saying the same thing, all with that same looping handwriting style, like in the logbook. I changed my number again and again and again 4 times in 2 weeks, and it didn't stop. I stopped sleeping in my bedroom, started sleeping on the couch with the TV on, volume up loud. But I'd wake up and the TV would be on a static channel. That white noise, and I'd hear the humming underneath it, that same deep hum from the hotel. And I'd feel that pressure on my chest. that weight, and I'd see shadows move across the walls that shouldn't be there, 'cause the only window is behind me and the only light is from the TV. I called my mama, and she said I sounded tired, said I should see a doctor, and I wanted to tell her. Man, I wanted to tell her so bad. But how do you tell your mama that a hotel room is haunting you? How do you tell her that you think something followed you home from the 8th floor of a building that's been standing since 1924 and used to be a hospital where people died? You don't. You just say, "I'm fine, mama, just working too much." And you hang up, and you sit there, and you listen. I started hearing it during the day, too. I'd be at the H-E-B buying groceries, and I'd hear that ticking, that clock ticking, coming from the freezer section. I'd be filling up my truck at the Valero, and I'd hear the humming from the pumps. I'd be in the shower, and I'd hear that shuffling sound, that sock on carpet sound, from the other side of the curtain, and I'd yank it back, and there'd be nothing there, just steam and water, but the mirror would be fogged up except for one clear patch, like someone had wiped it, and it would be at eye level, like someone had looked at themselves, or at me, and I couldn't wipe that away. No matter how hard I tried, it would stay clear. I quit my job. I called the hotel, talked to the general manager, nice lady named Patricia, and I told her I was done. I couldn't do nights anymore. And she said she understood. Said night shift burns everyone out eventually. And she asked if I'd work 2 more weeks while they found a replacement. And I said no. I said I was done that day. And she said okay, and I hung up. I didn't go in to get my last check. I had them mail it. I didn't return my uniform. I threw it away. Boots and all. I bought new clothes, new boots, new everything, and I thought that would be the end of it. But last week, I got a letter. No return address, just my name and address typed on the front. And inside was a single piece of paper, and on it was a photocopy of a page from a logbook. And it was my handwriting, but it wasn't what I'd written. It said, Jesse Ortiz, maintenance engineer, checked 810 at 03:000 hours. Found subject. Subject is aware. Subject is responding. And there was a picture, paperclip to it. A black and white picture of a hallway. And it was the 8th floor hallway at the Emily Morgan. I know it is. I know that carpet. I know those walls. And there was a figure standing at the end of the hall. Just a shape, a dark shape, and it was looking at the camera, and I know it was looking at me. I burned the letter. I burned it in the sink, and I watched the smoke go up. And I swear to God, the smoke made that humming sound, that same deep hum, and I turned on the fan and I opened all the windows, and I left for 3 hours. Just drove around, nowhere, just drove. When I came back, the sink was clean, no ash, no sign I'd burned anything. But the smell was there, that hospital smell, and it's still there. It's in my apartment right now. I can smell it as I'm talking to you. I can hear that ticking, that clock ticking, coming from my oven clock. But it's not the same rhythm. It's faster. It's keeping time with something else, something I can't hear, but I can feel. I don't go out much anymore. I order groceries delivered. I don't answer the door. I keep all the lights on, but the shadows are getting longer, man. They're getting darker, and they're moving when I'm not looking. And I see them from the corner of my eye. These shapes that are just wrong, that don't fit in my apartment, that look like they belong in that hallway, on that floor, in that room. I see that boot print when I close my eyes. I see that handprint on the window. I see my reflection not looking at me. And I hear that voice, that humming voice, not saying words, but saying something. And I know what it's saying. I know it deep down in my bones. It's saying, you still need to check 810. I don't know what it wants. I don't know if it's a ghost. I don't know if it's the building. I don't know if it's something that was always there. and I just woke it up by going in that room 3 times, or if it's something that followed me home because I didn't finish whatever I started. All I know is, I'm not me anymore. I'm not the guy who ate Texas cheesesteak melts and read the paper and called his mama on Sundays. I'm the guy who sees boot prints in water that shouldn't be there. I'm the guy who gets texts from phones he threw away. I'm the guy who can't look in mirrors anymore because I'm scared of what I might see looking back. I'm the guy who knows that somewhere on the 8th floor of the Emily Morgan Hotel, there's a room that's waiting for me to come back. And it's not going to stop waiting. And it's not going to stop reminding me that I left something undone. I moved last week, packed up everything I own, which isn't much. Just clothes and some dishes and my TV. And I moved to a different apartment on the other side of town, near the airport, where it's loud all the time, planes flying over every 15 minutes, and I thought the noise would drown it out. It doesn't. I still hear the humming underneath the engines. I still hear the ticking underneath the traffic. I still smell that hospital smell when the AC kicks on. And last night, I woke up at 3 in the morning, just like always, and I looked at my phone, the new phone, and there was a text, and it was from my new number, the one only my mama and sister have, and it said, 810 is ready for you. I didn't block it, I just stared at it, and I listened, and I heard the shuffling sound from the hallway outside my new apartment, and I saw the shadow under the door, the shadow of someone standing there, not moving, just waiting. And I knew it wasn't a person. I knew it couldn't be a person, because I live on the 3rd floor, and the only way to my door is past the manager's office, and she would have called me if someone was up here. But I didn't call her. I didn't move. I just sat there in my bed with the lights on, and I watched that shadow. And I watched it for 2 hours, until the sun came up and it faded away. But it didn't leave. It just faded, like it was still there, but the light made it invisible. I don't know what to do. I thought about going back, about checking 810, about finishing whatever I started. But I'm scared. Man, I'm more scared than I've ever been in my life. And I grew up in Kennedy, where the coyotes would come right up to your back door and stare at you through the glass. And I thought that was scary. But this is different. This is inside. This is in my head. This is in my phone. This is in my reflection. This is in the water that runs from my own faucet now. That sometimes runs when I'm not in the room. That leaves boot prints in my bathtub. That aren't mine. I don't know if I'm crazy. I don't know if this is what crazy feels like. I don't know if I should see a doctor or a priest or just drive back to that hotel and walk into that room and let whatever happens happen. But I know I won't. I'm too scared. I'm too far gone. I'm telling you this because I think maybe if I say it out loud, if I tell someone, anyone, even just my phone screen at 3 a.m., maybe it'll stop. Maybe it'll be satisfied that I told the story. Maybe it'll move on to someone else. But I don't think so. I think it's patient. I think it's been waiting a long time. Longer than I've been alive. Longer than my daddy's been alive. Maybe since that building was a hospital and people died there and left something behind. Something that doesn't understand why the building's still there, but the people are different. I think it wants me to know it's there. And it wants me to remember. And it wants me to be scared. And it's doing a good job. Man, it's doing a real good job. I don't work night shifts anymore. I don't work any shifts. I don't do much of anything. I just sit here. And I listen. And I wait for the next text. The next sound. The next shadow. And I try to remember what it was like before I knew about 810, before I knew that some places are just wrong, that some rooms don't want to be fixed. They want to be remembered. They want to be feared. I try to remember what it was like to just be Jesse Ortiz from Kennedy, who fixed toilets and reset breakers and ate Waffle House at 10:30 at night. But I can't. That person is gone. And I'm what's left. This scared, shaking thing that jumps at every sound and sees shapes in every shadow and smells hospital disinfectant in every room. I'm telling you this because I have to tell someone. Because if I don't, I'll forget how to talk altogether. I'll just become the humming. I'll become the ticking. I'll become that shadow at the end of the hall that isn't really there but is more real than I am now. I'm telling you this because it's 3 a.m. and I'm behind my trailer, the one I moved into after I couldn't stand apartments anymore. And it's got a metal roof that rattles when the wind blows. And the wind's blowing tonight. And I'm sitting here in my truck with the engine running just for the noise. And I'm looking at my phone. And I'm waiting for the next message. And I'm praying it doesn't come, but I know it will. Because it always does. And I'm scared that this time it'll just be a picture. A picture of me, taken from behind, in a hallway I haven't walked down in months. And I'll know that I'm not alone in this truck, that something's in the back seat, something that followed me out here to this trailer park where the streetlights don't reach and the nights stretch too long. I'm telling you this because I think maybe you're listening. And maybe that's enough. Maybe if you're listening, then it's not just me and it anymore. Maybe it's me and you and it, and maybe that changes the math somehow. But I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. I just know I don't work night shifts anymore. I don't work at all. I just survive. And sometimes I'm not even sure I'm doing that right. Sometimes I think I'm just another sound the building makes when it thinks no one's listening. Sometimes I think I'm the leak that won't stop. Sometimes I think I'm the one who's been checking 810 all along and I just don't remember it. And the Jesse Ortiz who's talking to you right now is the anomaly. I'm the thing that shouldn't be in this space. I'm the figure that doesn't exist. And maybe that's the scariest part. Maybe the reason it won't leave me alone is because I'm the one haunting it, not the other way around. Maybe I'm the ghost, but I don't feel like a ghost. I feel heavy. I feel real. I feel scared. And I feel alone. Except I'm not alone. I haven't been alone since that first night, and I don't think I ever will be again. My name's Billy Ray Tackett. I'm from the old Fisher place off Ranch Road, 2320, right there by Wimberley, and I work as a concrete finisher. I'm telling you this because I don't know who else to tell, and my wife, she just looks at me like I'm losing it, and maybe I am, but I swear to God this happened. I got this call last Tuesday. No, wait, it was Monday the 12th. I remember because I had to reschedule my boy's dentist appointment. And Sherry was mad about that. They wanted a barn foundation poured out at the Fisher Ranch, and I've been out there before. Did some work for them back in 2019. Just a slab for equipment shed. Nothing weird about it. Just another job. I woke up at 5 like always. Had my coffee and a breakfast taco from the Stripes on 35. The one with the lady who always remembers I want extra hot sauce. I wore my gray work shirt. The one with the tear on the left sleeve from that rebar snag last month. And my brown Carhartt pants. I packed my mag float and my trowels and the new bull float I got from Home Depot that I hadn't used yet. I filled up my 97 Chevy, the blue one with the dented tailgate, at 6:47 exactly, because I remember looking at the clock and thinking I was running early. I met my helper out there. He's this kid named Miguel. No, wait, that's not right. His name was Luis Garcia. He's been working with me since March. Good kid, quiet, shows up on time. He was already there when I pulled in at 7:30 on the dot, sitting in his little Honda with the engine running and the AC blasting. We unloaded the mixer from the trailer. It's one of those tow-behind Canicom units. Reliable usually, but it's been acting up lately. The pull start sticks sometimes. The Fisher place is about 3 miles off the main road. You go past the gate with the big live oak that got hit by lightning last year. It's all scarred on one side, then down this dirt road that curves around the limestone outcroppings. The Devil's Backbone is right there. You can see it rising up to the west, all those layers of rock like a giant spine. And I always thought that was just a name, just something they called it because of how it looks. We were pouring a 40 by 60 slab for a new barn they want to put up. Just a standard 4-inch thick, with rebar grid. Luis and I set up the forms, checked the grade, everything normal. It was going to be a hot one, already 82 degrees at 8 in the morning. And the drought had everything so dry the dust was rising up in clouds with every step. We started mixing at 9:15. I wrote it down in my logbook. I always write it down because you never know when a client will say you weren't there as long as you said. The first load came out good, nice consistency. We screeded it off, and I was working the edges with my trowel, while Luis ran the bull float. We got the first section done by 10:30, smooth as glass. I was proud of that work. We took a water break. I drank a Dr. Pepper I brought in my cooler. Luis had one of those Gatorades. The blue kind. That's when I noticed the first thing. I had my phone in my shirt pocket. I keep it there for the time, and I pulled it out and it said 11:23. But my watch, my old Timex I've had for 12 years, said 10:42. I just figured the watch battery was going. It does that sometimes when it gets too hot. The hands stick a little. I didn't think about it. We started mixing the second batch and the Canicom. Man, it just wouldn't turn over. Luis pulled that cord maybe 15 times, and it was sputtering but not catching. And I remember thinking the gas might be bad, even though I filled it fresh that morning. I went over to check the fuel line, and when I stood up, I got dizzy. Like that feeling when you stand up too fast, but worse. And the sun was so bright it made white spots in my vision. Luis said, "Boss, you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, just the heat." And I sat down for a minute. I looked at my phone again, and now it said 11:24. Only a minute had passed, but it felt like 10. My watch still said 10:42. The second hand wasn't moving. I tapped it. Sometimes that gets it going. It started ticking again, but it jumped from 10:42 to 10. 44 inches, one tick. I figured it was broken for real this time. We finally got the mixer started. I don't even remember how. It just caught and roared to life, like nothing was wrong. We poured the second section, and I was mag floating the surface, doing that figure-8 pattern I learned from my dad. And I looked up at the sun to judge the heat. And it was right at zenith, straight overhead, which meant noon. But my phone said 11:56. My watch said 10:45 now. And Luis, he was working the float, but his movements were too slow, like he was moving through water. And I called out to him, "Hey, you need a break?" And he didn't answer. Just kept pushing that float in this weird rhythm. The same patch of concrete. Back and forth. Back and forth. I walked over to him, my boots sticking in the mud a little, and I tapped his shoulder. He stopped and looked at me, and his eyes were wrong. I can't explain it, they were his eyes. Brown with that little scar over his left eyebrow from when he caught a flying rock last month. But they were looking through me, not at me. He said, "We're almost done with this section, boss." But his voice sounded like it was coming from far away, like he was at the other end of a tunnel. I said, "Luis, we finished this section. Remember? We did it an hour ago." And he just stared at me and said, "No, we just started." I swear to God, man, I got cold right then, even in that 100-degree heat. I looked down at the concrete we were standing on, and it was still wet, still glossy. But we'd finished this part. It should have been setting up already. I could see my own boot prints in it. But they were fresh, like I just stepped in it. But I hadn't. I'd been careful to stay on the screed rails. I looked at the first section we'd poured, the one I was so proud of, and it looked exactly the same as this section. Same wet sheen, same consistency, like no time had passed between them. I checked my phone, 11:50. My watch, 10:46. The sun, still directly overhead. I told Luis to take 5, go sit in the shade of the truck, and he just nodded and walked off. But he walked wrong. His steps were too even, like he was counting them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Each step the same length. And he didn't kick up any dust, even though the ground was dry as bone. I stood there alone with that concrete, and I started feeling like the air was pressing in on me, like the sky got lower. I could hear the cicadas, but they were buzzing in a pattern. This same 3-second loop. Buzz, 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 pause. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Pause. Over and over. I looked at the devil's backbone, and it looked closer than it had before. Like the ridge had moved in while I wasn't looking. I went to the truck to get my level, and Luis was sitting in the passenger seat with the door open. But he wasn't drinking his water or nothing. He was just sitting there staring straight ahead at the limestone cliffs. I said, "You sure you're okay?" And he said, "The forms are holding good, boss." But we weren't working on the forms. We'd taken them down already. I didn't correct him. I just grabbed my level and went back to the slab. When I got back to the concrete, the edge I had been working, the one I'd troweled smooth at 10:30, it was rough again. Not like it had been messed up, but like it had never been finished. The trowel marks I remembered making were gone, and it was just the rough screed finish. I ran my hand over it, and it was cool, not warm like concrete should be after setting in that sun. I looked at my level, and the bubble was stuck all the way to one side, like the tool was broken. But I knew it wasn't broken because I'd calibrated it that morning. I shook it, and the bubble didn't move. That's when I heard the boots. Concrete boots make a specific sound on hard ground, that heavy thud, with a little scrape, and I heard it coming from behind me, from the direction of the mixer. But Luis was in the truck, and I was alone on the slab. I turned around and there was nobody there, just the Canicom sitting where we'd left it, but the drum was turning. It was turning slow, that slow rotation it does when you're mixing. But there was no engine noise. It was just spinning silent, and I know that shouldn't be possible because those drums have a gear lock when the engine's off. I walked over to it. My legs felt like they weighed 100 pounds each, and I reached out to touch the drum. It was warm, like it had been running, but the engine was cold. I pulled the starter cord just to see, and it started on the first pull, perfect, like it had never given us trouble. I shut it off quick, and when I turned back to the slab, Luis was there again. Mag floating that same section, the one I'd just looked at, that was rough, but now it was smooth like he'd been working it for an hour. I didn't see him walk up. He was just there. I called out, "Luis, when did you get back?" And he said, "I've been here the whole time, boss." He said it without looking up from his work. I walked over to him and I looked at his face, and he was sweating, but the sweat wasn't dripping. It was just beading on his skin and staying there. Little perfect drops. I said, "What time is it?" And he pulled out his phone and showed me. 12:03 p.m. My phone still said 11:57. My watch said 10:47. The sun hadn't moved. I went to my truck and got my radio. We keep one for when we're out where there's no service, and I clicked it on to call the office just to hear another voice. Just to check in. Static. Fine. That's normal out here. But then the static resolved into this sound, this clicking, like someone tapping the transmit button on another radio. But it was too regular. Click, 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 click. I listened for maybe a minute, and it never changed. That same pattern. I turned the radio off, and the clicking kept going for 3 more beats before it stopped. I know, because I counted. Luis called me back to the slab, said we needed to get the control joints cut before it set too hard. But we hadn't even finished the whole pour yet. We still had the last quarter to mix. I told him that, and he looked at me like I was crazy, and he pointed at the whole slab and said, "Boss, it's all done. We just need to cut it." I looked, and he was right. The whole 40 by 60 was poured, screeded, floated, troweled, everything. But I didn't remember doing any of it beyond that second section. I didn't remember mixing more concrete. I didn't remember Luis working that bull float across the whole thing. But there it was, perfect, with our tool marks in it, and it was all the same age, all setting at the same rate. I checked my phone. 12:04. My watch. 10:48. The sun, still directly overhead, but now there were shadows. Long shadows, like late afternoon shadows, stretching out from the trees and the truck and the mixer. But the sun hadn't moved. The shadows were pointing east, which meant the sun was in the west. But I could see it right there, overhead, white and burning. Luis didn't seem to notice. He was setting up the groover, acting like everything was normal. And I asked him, "Luis, when did we finish the pour?" And he said, "Right after breakfast, boss. We've been doing the finish work all morning." We hadn't had breakfast. We'd started work at 7:30. I remembered that Stripes taco, the Dr. Pepper. But Luis was acting like we'd been there since dawn. I asked him what time we started, and he said, 6, like you said. But I told him 7:30. I know I did. I have the text message where I told him 7:30. I went to the truck and got my water jug, and I drank the whole thing, a half-gallon, in one go. I was so thirsty, like I hadn't had water all day. I looked at the jug, and it was the one I'd filled that morning at the office. The blue igloo with the dent in the side. But it was empty now, and I only remembered drinking that one Dr. Pepper. I checked my lunchbox, thinking maybe I'd brought 2 waters, but there was just my sandwich, ham and cheese on wheat, still wrapped, and the Dr. Pepper can, empty. But my mouth tasted like I'd been drinking water all day. That clean taste, not the syrup taste of soda. Luis started cutting the control joints, and I watched him. He was doing it right, the spacing perfect, but he was moving too fast. His arms were blurring, man. Like one of those time-lapse videos where you speed everything up. He'd cut a 10-foot line in one smooth motion that should have taken 30 seconds, but it took maybe 3. I blinked hard, thinking it was the heat. But when I opened my eyes, he was still moving like that. And the dust he was kicking up wasn't settling. It was just hanging in the air, in these perfect clouds. I looked away, down at my boots, and I saw they were covered in concrete splatter. Fresh splatter. Wet, but I hadn't been near the pour since that second section. My pants had it too, all up the legs, and my shirt. I touched it, and it was tacky, like it had been on there about an hour. I didn't remember getting it on me. I looked at my hands, and they were raw, like I'd been working concrete all day. The skin on my palms was red and starting to crack from the lime. But I had my gloves on. I always wear my gloves. I pulled them off, and my hands looked like I'd been working barehanded for 6 hours straight. I called Luis again. I said, "Luis, we need to pack up. Something's wrong." He stopped cutting, and he looked at me, and his face was different. He looked older. The scar over his eye was healed. Not fresh like it should have been. And he had lines around his mouth I didn't remember. He said, "Boss, we can't leave yet. The slab's not cured." I said, "We just poured it. It doesn't need to cure. We just need to let it set." He shook his head, and he pointed at the concrete and said, "It's been 3 days. It hadn't been 3 days. It was Monday. We'd started at 9:15. I pulled out my phone to show him the date, and the screen was cracked. It hadn't been cracked before. It was cracked in this spiderweb pattern, and the time still said 12:04, but the date said the 15th. Thursday. I dropped the phone. It landed in the dirt, and the screen went black. I picked it up, and it was hot, like it had been sitting in the sun for hours, but it had been in my pocket. I looked at my watch, and it said 10:49, but the hands were spinning now, spinning backwards. I ripped it off my wrist and threw it in the truck bed. Luis was just standing there with the groover in his hand, watching me, and his expression was blank, like he was waiting for me to do something, but I didn't know what. I said, "Luis, what day is it?" And he said, "Thursday, boss. You said we had to finish before Friday." I never said that. The job wasn't even supposed to take all day Monday. I backed away from him, from the slab, and I got in my truck. I told him to get his stuff. We're leaving. He didn't move. He just stood there on that concrete, and I realized his boots weren't leaving prints anymore. He was standing on wet concrete, and it wasn't taking his weight. He wasn't sinking in at all. I turned the key in my truck, and the engine turned over but didn't start. I tried again. Same thing. I looked at the dash clock, and it said 7:30, the exact time we'd arrived. I got out of the truck, and Luis was gone. Just gone. The slab was empty. The tools were there. The groover lying on the concrete where he dropped it. But he wasn't there. I called his name and my voice sounded flat, like the air swallowed the sound. I walked around the truck and his Honda was still there. Still running. But when I looked in the window, there was nobody inside. The AC was blasting cold air and the radio was on. Playing a song I couldn't make out. Just this muffled melody. I went back to the slab, and the concrete was hard. All of it. Hard as stone. I tapped it with my mag float, and it rang like metal. I knelt down and touched it, and it was ice cold. Not cool. Not setting concrete warm, but ice cold, like it had been in a freezer. There were footprints in it. Dozens of them, all overlapping. All the same size as my boots. I measured one with my tape measure. It was exactly 11 inches, my boot size. But I hadn't walked on the finished sections. I always stay on the screed rails. Always. I stood up, and the sun was setting. It had been noon, and now it was setting. But it hadn't moved across the sky. It was just suddenly there on the horizon. Huge and red. And the shadows were stretching all the way across the field, but they were pointing in every direction, not just one. The devil's backbone was right there, like it had moved even closer, and I could see caves in the limestone I hadn't seen before, dark openings like eye sockets. I grabbed my tools, all of them, threw them in the truck bed. The level fell out, and when it hit the ground, the bubble was centered, perfect, like it had never been broken. I left the Canicom. I just left it. I got in my truck and turned the key. And it started on the first try. I drove out of there so fast. I almost took out the gate. That lightning-scarred oak. I missed it by inches. I got back to the office at 6:15. I know because I looked at the clock on the wall. I went inside and my boss was there and he said, "How'd the Fisher job go?" And I said, "We need to talk about Luis." And he looked at me funny and said, "Who's Luis?" I told him, "My helper. The kid who's been working with me since March." My boss shook his head and said, "Billy Ray, you work alone. You always have." I showed him my phone. The crack. The date that now said Monday again. He looked at it and said, "That crack's been there for months." It hadn't been. I know it hadn't been. He paid me for the day. Said the Fishers called, and said the slab looked great, that I'd finished the whole thing in one day, and they were impressed. I didn't tell him about the time. I didn't tell him about Luis disappearing. I just took the check and left. I drove home and Sherry asked me how work was, and I said fine. I couldn't tell her. She'd think I was on drugs or something. I went to the bathroom and washed my hands and they were still raw, still cracked, and there was concrete under my fingernails. I scrubbed for 20 minutes, and it wouldn't come out. I looked at myself in the mirror, and I looked older. There were lines by my eyes. I didn't have that morning. My hair looked grayer. I touched my face, and it felt like someone else's skin. That night I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I heard that cicada loop. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Pause. And I heard those boots on concrete. That thud scrape sound. I got up at 3 a.m. and I checked my phone and it was dead. Wouldn't turn on. I plugged it in and it showed the battery at 84%, but it still wouldn't turn on. I got my old phone from the drawer, the one I had before this one, and I turned it on and it worked fine. The date was right. Monday the 12th. The time was 3:04 a.m. But my new phone, the one I'd had in my pocket at the ranch, it was dead for good. The next day, I went to the office to get my schedule, and my boss said, "You took yesterday off, Billy Ray. You called in sick." I said no. I was at the Fisher Ranch. I poured that slab. He showed me the logbook, and there was my name, but it said called in sick, 6:30 a.m. I didn't call in sick. I was there. I remembered every detail, the taco, the Dr. Pepper, the mixer not starting. But there it was in his handwriting, called in sick. I tried to call Luis to see if he was real, if he remembered. I had his number in my phone, but my phone was dead. I went to the office roster and looked up Garcia, Luis, and there was no Luis Garcia. There was a Luis Martinez who worked in the warehouse, but he'd been there for 10 years. I asked around. I asked the other crews if they'd seen me with a helper, and they all said, "Billy Ray, you always work solo." One guy, Frank, he said, "You were talking to yourself a lot on the Fisher job. We figured the heat was getting to you. I went back out to the Fisher ranch yesterday. I don't know why I went. I guess I had to see. I drove down Ranch Road 2320, and that live oak by the gate looked different. The lightning scar was on the other side. I swear to God. It was on the left side now, and I remembered it being on the right. The dirt road was paved. It was dirt on Monday, but now it was paved asphalt, smooth and black, like it had been there for years. I got to where the barn should be, and there was no barn, no slab, nothing. Just bare earth with grass growing on it, like no one had ever dug there. I got out of my truck and I walked to the spot where I remembered the concrete being, and I knelt down, and I dug my fingers into the dirt, and it was just dirt. No rebar, no gravel base, nothing. But when I stood up, there were boot prints in the dirt. Fresh ones. Size 11. Mine. Leading from my truck to the spot and back. And there were other prints too. Smaller ones. Like a younger man's. Right next to them. Like someone had been walking beside me. I got in my truck and I drove away. And I didn't look in the rearview mirror until I was back on the highway. When I did, the road was dirt again. I could see the dust cloud I was kicking up. I'm telling you this because I don't know what else to do. I lost 3 hours, or I lost 3 days, or I never went there at all, and I just imagined the whole thing. But my boots have concrete splatter on them that won't wash off. My hands are still raw. My phone is still dead. And last night I woke up at 3 a.m. and I looked out my bedroom window, and the devil's backbone was there. I live in Kyle. That's 20 miles away. You can't see the backbone from my house, but there it was. Right outside my window. Close enough I could see those cave openings, those eye sockets, and I heard that cicada loop. Buzz, buzz, buzz. And I heard boots on concrete. Thud, scrape, and there was a shadow in my yard that didn't belong to anything. I don't pour concrete anymore. I called my boss, and I quit. He said he understood. Said I'd been acting strange since Monday. I didn't tell him why. I can't go back out there. I can't even drive past that. Stripes on 35 where I got the taco because the lady who works there, she handed me my change yesterday, and she said, "You feeling better? You looked real sick Monday." I said I wasn't there Monday. She said, "Sure you were. You came in at 6:30, got your usual. You were pale as a sheet. I got my food, and I left, and I haven't been back." The time thing, man, it's still happening. I'll be sitting on my couch and I'll look at the clock and it'll say 2:15 and I'll blink and it'll say 5:30 and I'll have no memory of those 3 hours. I'll find things moved in my house. My boots will be by the door when I left them in the bedroom. My tools. I sold them all to Frank after I quit. But I found my favorite trowel in my truck yesterday. The one with the nick in the blade. And I know I gave that one to Frank. I called him and I said, "Frank, you got that trowel I gave you?" And he said, "Billy Ray, you never gave me no trowel. You came by, said you were quitting, and left. Didn't bring no tools." I don't know what happened at the Fisher Ranch. I don't know if Luis was real, or if I was alone the whole time, or if I was even there at all. But I know this. When I sleep, I dream about that concrete. I dream about walking on it and my feet sinking in. And I dream about the sun not moving. And I dream about the devil's backbone getting closer. And I wake up and my hands hurt like I've been working all night. And there's concrete dust in my bed. And my phone is dead again. even though I charged it before I went to sleep. I hear that cicada loop sometimes during the day, just for a second. And I hear those boots, and I feel that dizziness like I'm standing up too fast, but I'm just sitting there. I'm telling you this because I think something followed me back. Not a person, not a ghost, nothing like that. Just this gap, this missing piece, like time got torn out there, and now there's a hole in me and things fall through it. I lose hours. I lose memories. I find evidence of things I didn't do. And the Fishers called me yesterday, left a voicemail on my home phone, the landline, and they said, "Mr. Tackett, we loved the work you did. We'd like to hire you for another project out here. We're expanding the barn." I listened to that message 3 times, and each time it sounded more like the voice was coming from far away, like from the bottom of a well, and there was that clicking in the background, that radio click-click pattern. I deleted the message. I blocked their number. But I know they'll call again. I know they will, because that slab is out there. I know it is, even if I can't see it. It's there in that time that I lost, and it's curing, and it's waiting. And every time I lose another hour, I think maybe I'm back there, finishing it, working with Luis, who maybe never existed. And the sun is stuck at noon and the devil's backbone is breathing. Man, it's breathing like a living thing. I swear to God, I can feel it sometimes. That limestone ridge, feel it in my chest like a weight. And I know it's gotten bigger. It's stretched out, and one day I'm going to wake up, and it's going to be right outside my door, and the concrete will be poured all the way from there to here, and I'll have to walk on it, and I'll sink in, and the time will stop for good. I don't know what to do. I've thought about going to a doctor, but what would I say? I lost time? I see things that aren't there? I have a helper who doesn't exist? They'd lock me up, and maybe they should. Maybe I am crazy, but my boots are sitting by my door right now, and they're covered in that red Texas dirt from Ranch Road, 2320, and I haven't been out there since yesterday. I cleaned them last night. I scrubbed them with the hose. But there it is again. And my phone, I got a new one. It's in my pocket, but I know it's gonna die too. They all die. The time just stops for them. Listen, I'm telling you this because you need to know. If you go out past Wimberley, if you get a job anywhere near that ridge, you check your watch, you check your phone, you check the sun, and if they don't match, you leave. You leave everything and you drive and you don't look back. Because time doesn't work right out there. It gets thick, like that concrete. It sets up around you. And before you know it, you're stuck in it and you're part of it, and you're pouring yourself out 1 minute at a time and you can't get it back. Those 3 hours I lost, they're still out there. And I think they're multiplying. I think they're making more of themselves. And one day I'm gonna lose a whole day, then a week, then a month, and eventually I'm just gonna be gone, just like Luis. Just a name that nobody remembers, just a shadow that falls the wrong way on concrete that shouldn't be there. I'm scared to go to sleep tonight. I'm scared because last night I dreamed I was back there. And when I woke up, I found a mag float under my pillow. I don't own a mag float anymore. I sold them all, but there it was, cold and heavy, and it had initials carved in the handle. B, T, my initials, but the carving looked old, worn smooth by years of handling. I've never carved my initials in any of my tools. I don't mark them like that, but there they were, and the float was worn. The edges rounded off like it had been used for decades. I threw it in the trash, but this morning it was on my kitchen table, clean, like it had been washed. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm just a concrete finisher. I just wanted to do my job and go home. But that ridge, man, that devil's backbone, it's not just rock, it's something else. It's a spine, like they say, but it's the spine of something that time doesn't work on right, something that lives in the gaps between seconds. And I think I woke it up, pouring that slab, making something permanent in a place where nothing is supposed to stay. And now it's got a piece of me, and it's using that piece to pull the rest of me back, one lost hour at a time. I swear to God, if you listen close, you can hear it. You can hear that cicada buzz, and those boots, and that radio clicking. You can hear time tearing. And if you hear it, if you ever hear it, you run. You run. And you don't stop. Because once it knows your name, once it has your boot print, it doesn't let go. It just keeps you there, working, always working, while the sun stays still and the concrete never sets and the ridge gets closer and closer until it's all you can see. I'm going to end this now. My phone's at 1%, the new one, and I charged it all day. The time on it says 3:47 a.m., but the clock on the wall says 11:23 p.m. They're both wrong. I can feel it. I can feel that 3-hour gap opening up inside me. And I know when I stop talking, I'm going to fall into it again. I just hope I come back. I hope I come back with all my pieces. But I don't think I will. I think next time I lose 3 hours, I'm going to lose a part of me with it. And eventually there'll be nothing left but the concrete and the boots and that sun that won't move. I'm telling you, man, I'm telling you so someone knows. So someone remembers that Billy Ray Tackett was a concrete finisher from Kyle, Texas, and that he poured a slab at the Fisher Ranch, off Ranch Road, 2,320, and that something happened there that shouldn't have. I'm telling you because I think I'm about to be the thing that shouldn't exist in that space. I think I'm about to be the ghost, and I'm scared. I'm so scared. But the clock's ticking backwards now. I can hear it in my head, tick-tock tick. And the shadow in my yard is getting longer. And I think the ridge is outside my window again. I think it's here. I think it's always been here. I think I never left. I think I'm still out there, pouring that slab. And this is the dream. This confession. This is the thing I'm hallucinating while the sun stays at noon and the concrete sets around my boots. I don't know anymore. I don't know what's real. I just know I don't pour concrete anymore. I can't. Because every time I close my eyes, I see that slab, perfect and smooth. And I see my boot prints in it. Hundreds of them. And I know I made them all. Over and over, while time folded in on itself and swallowed me whole. I'm telling you this so you know. So you stay away from that ridge. So you don't lose what I lost. Because once it's gone, those hours, those days, those pieces of yourself, they don't come back. They just become part of the foundation. They become permanent, and you become the thing that haunts the space between seconds. You become the boots on the concrete. You become the sound that shouldn't be there. You become the ghost, and you can't quit that job. You can't quit being a ghost. My name's Travis Boudreau. I'm from Dimebox, Texas, and I work as a water well driller. I need to tell you this because I think I'm losing my mind, and I need someone else to know what happened in case it gets worse. I don't know who to tell. My girlfriend left last month, she said. Wasn't sleeping. I was talking in Spanish in my sleep, and I don't even speak Spanish. Not really. I took 2 years in high school. But that was 15 years ago, and I barely passed. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. That's the problem. I can't keep things straight anymore. Timeline is all mixed up in my head. Okay, start at the beginning. That's what they say, right? Start at the beginning. We got the call on a Tuesday morning. The boss said there was a rancher near Goliad, needed a well drilled urgent. His cattle were suffering in the drought, and his old well had gone dry. This was back in July. July 18th, I remember because it was my mom's birthday and I forgot to call her. Because of what happened, we left the shop in Victoria at 5:30 inches the morning. I had a breakfast taco from Stripes Bean and Cheese with that red salsa they keep in the little cups. I was wearing my gray Carhartt shirt, the one with the hole in the left sleeve, and my jeans that are frayed at the cuffs. My boots are Wolverines. I've had them 3 years. The left sole is coming loose, but I keep gluing it back on. Jake, my partner, was with me. He's been drilling with me for 6 years. He's from El Campo. He's got that red Ford hat he always wears, and a mustache that makes him look older than 32. We were in the company truck, the white F-250, with the dent in the passenger door. from when I backed into a pump jack last year. The drive down 77 was normal. We talked about the Astros and how they're never going to make it back to the World Series. We turned off on FM 2441 west of Goliad proper. The ranch was about 8 miles out near the San Antonio River bottom. The land is flat out there, cracked from the drought. The rancher, Mr. Cerny, he met us at the gate. He's this old Czech guy, maybe 70, skinny as a fence post. He had a limp from a horse that stepped on him 20 years ago. He told us he's lived on that Circle C ranch a whole life. His daddy bought it in 1952. He said the old house. His mama died in 1998, and he just left it empty. Couldn't bear to sell it, but couldn't live in it either. The house is about 200 yards from where we were going to drill. It's a white 2-story farmhouse with a porch that sags in the middle and one window upstairs that faces the well site. That window is important. I'm getting to that. We picked our spot based on the survey. The boss ran the numbers, said we should hit water at 180 feet. Limestone aquifer, good flow rate. We marked off the pad. I remember it was 6:47 a.m. when I punched the time into my phone. We set up the Versadrill V2000. It's a good rig. We've had it 5 years, serial number 8847. I know that because I have to write it on the maintenance logs every week. We leveled it, checked the fluids, hooked up the pipe. Everything was normal. The sun was coming up and it was already hot. Gonna be a scorcher, they said. 105 degrees easy. The sky was that white color it gets when there's no moisture anywhere. Just heat and dust. We started drilling at 2:15 a.m. The bit went into the ground. Smooth limestone dust coming up. The sound was normal. That grinding whine. That means you're cutting through rock. Jake was running the controls. I was watching the returns, the water and mud coming. Back up. Everything was going by the book at 80 feet. I hit a clay layer. The sound changed a little softer, but still normal. At 120 feet, we were back in limestone. I remember thinking we might even hit water early, the way the ground was saturated with dryness, if that makes sense. Then at 11:23 a.m., we were at 180 feet, exactly where the water should be. And the sound changed, but not like rock sounds changed. It was different. The drill started humming, not grinding humming, like a tuning fork, like when you flick a glass with your fingernail, that high, clear tone. Jake looked at me, and I looked at him, and he said, "What the hell is that?" I said, "I don't know. Maybe we hit a metal pipe or something old. Well, casing left over from the 1,930 seconds. It happens sometimes, but the survey didn't show anything." We pulled the power bit up to check it, and the bit was fine. No damage, no metal, shavings, nothing. But when we lowered it back down, that hum started again at exactly 180 feet. Jake said, "Maybe it's a cave formation, a big empty space making the pipe resonate. That can happen. But I've heard that sound before. And this was different. This was like the ground was singing back at us, like we had woken something up." We drilled down to 185 feet, and the hum got louder, not just through the rig, but in the air around us. I could hear it coming up from the well head, like a vent, like the earth was exhaling this note, and it was the same note over and over, no variation. We broke for lunch at noon. I had a bologna sandwich with mustard on white bread from my ice chest. It was warm, but I ate it anyway. I had a bag of Cool Ranch Doritos too. The ones with the blue bag. Jake had leftover BBQ brisket his wife made. We sat in the truck with the AC blasting, and I could still hear that hum faint, like it was in my teeth. Like when you bite down on aluminum foil, but constant. Mr. Cerny came by on his four-wheeler. He asked how it was going. I said, "We hit something weird making a noise." He said, "Oh, that's just the land out here. It's got memories." I asked what he meant, and he said, his daddy always said this. Land don't forget nothing. It holds on to things. I thought that was just old man talk. You know how they get. But then he said, the cattle won't come near this spot. They've been avoiding it. since we cleared the brush for your pad, and I looked up, and sure enough, the cattle were all grouped on the far side of the pasture, maybe 50 yards away, just standing there facing us, but not coming closer, not even looking for shade. And it was 102 degrees. By then, they should have been under the mesquite trees. Mr. Cerny left, and we went back to work. The hum was still there at 180 feet. We decided to push through it. Maybe it would stop at a different depth. We went down to 190 feet, 200 feet. The hum never changed, never shifted. It was like we were drilling through a radio station, through a signal that was broadcasting from inside the earth at 210 feet. Jake shut down the rig. He said, "Man, I can't take that sound anymore. It's giving me a headache." He was right. It was inside my head too. Not just in my ears, but behind my eyes. I could feel it in my sinuses like pressure. Changes when a storm comes. But there was no storm. Just that endless drought sky. We were packing up to call it a day. We'd try again tomorrow. Maybe get a different bit. Maybe the boss would have an idea. And that's when I heard it. The first clear sound. That wasn't just a hum. It was a voice. Not like a person standing next to me, but like someone speaking through a pipe from far away. It said something in Spanish. I swear to God it did. I don't speak Spanish, but I know the word for help. And it said, "Ayuda." Just once, clear as day. I froze. And Jake said what I said. "Did you hear that?" He said, "Hear what I," said that voice. And he looked at me like I was crazy. He said, "Travis, you need to drink more water. You're hearing things." But then it happened again. This time, louder, not through the air, but from the wellhead itself. Like the pipe was a megaphone, and the voice was coming up from 210 feet down. And it said, "Ayuda," again. And then another word I didn't know, but it sounded like a name maybe, or a place. And Jake heard it too. This time his face went white. He said, "What the hell is that?" I said, "I don't know, but we need to get out of here." He said, "No, we need to finish the job. The boss will kill us." I said, "I don't care." I grabbed his arm, and that's when we both heard it. Not one voice, but many, all coming up from that hole in the ground like a chorus, all saying the same thing in unison. And the language wasn't just Spanish, it was something else too. Something older, sounding like the words had too many syllables, like they were being stretched out. Jake started the rig back up. He said, "Maybe if we drill through it, it'll stop. Maybe we're just hitting some weird acoustic strata, and it's picking up radio waves from Mexico. That happens. Sometimes the atmosphere does funny things," but I knew this wasn't radio. This was from the ground. This was from under the ground. And the voices were getting louder and more desperate, and I could feel them in my chest, like bass from a car stereo. But there was no rhythm, no beat, just this constant pleading. And then I looked up at the farmhouse at that upstairs window, and there was a face in it, not Mr. Cerny. This was a younger face, a man with a mustache wearing what looked like an old military hat, like from the pictures you see in history books. And he was just standing there watching us, and the window was reflecting the sun. But his face was clear as day, and he wasn't moving, just staring. I grabbed Jake's shoulder and pointed, and he looked up and he saw it too. He said, "Who the hell is that?" I said, "Mr. Cerny said, nobody lives there." He said, "Well, that's somebody." And then the face moved. It turned like it was looking at something else in the room, and then it was gone. Not like it stepped back, but like it was erased, like someone wiped it from the glass. And the window was just a window, again, reflecting the sky. We shut everything down. We left the pipe in the ground. We left the rig right there. We just got in the truck and drove. And as we were driving away, I looked in the side mirror, and that window was empty again. But the wellhead, I could see it, even from 200 yards away. The ground around it was moving not like water, but like something was pushing up from underneath, like the earth was breathing in that one spot, just pulsing up and down, and the voices were still there. I could hear them even over the engine, even with the windows up. Even with the radio on, they were inside the truck with us, coming through the speakers even though the radio was off. And Jake was praying under his breath. He was saying, God, please, God, please. And I was just driving as fast as that truck would go on that dirt road. We got back to the shop at 4:30 p.m. The boss was there. He said, "What the hell are you doing back early? Where's the rig?" I said, "It's still out there. We left it." He started yelling about money and contracts, and I just stood there until he stopped. And I said, "Boss, there was something wrong out there, something in the caplay ground." And he said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "We hit something at 180 feet, and it started making noises, and then voices." And he looked at me like I'd grown a second head. He said, "Voices. Travis, are you using again?" And I said, "No, sir, I've never used anything." And Jake backed me up. He said, "We both heard it." And the boss said, "Get out of my office. Both of you. You're fired if you don't go back and get that rig tomorrow morning." That was a Tuesday. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my apartment in Victoria, on the second floor, overlooking the highway, and I could hear it faint through the traffic noise, that hum, that voice, saying Ayuda, over and over, like a loop. I turned on the TV, turned on music. Nothing covered it up. I was in the walls, man. It was in the pipes when I turned on the faucet. It was in the hum of the refrigerator when it kicked on. I called Jake at midnight. I said, "Are you hearing this?" And he said, "Yeah, man, I'm hearing it." I said, "What are we gonna do?" He said, "I don't know, but I'm not going back out there." I said, "Me neither." Wednesday morning, the boss called me at 6 a.m. He said, "Travis, I'm sorry, I believe you." I said, "What changed your mind?" He said, Mr. Cerny called him at 5 a.m. Said the ground around the wellhead was sunk in like a sinkhole had started, but stopped halfway. Said his cattle were still acting crazy. Said he heard music coming from the pipe at 3 a.m. music like a church choir. But singing words he didn't understand. The boss said he'd send a different crew to retrieve the rig. But he wanted me to write up exactly what happened for the insurance. I said, "I don't know how to write this." He said, "Just write what you heard." I said, "You wouldn't believe me." He said, "Try me." I wrote the report. I said we hit an anomaly at 180 feet that caused acoustic resonance that manifested as vocal patterns. I used all the technical language I could think of to make it sound like a equipment malfunction. But the boss called me after he read it and said, "Travis, this sounds like you're describing ghosts." And I said, "I don't know what it was, but it wasn't normal equipment behavior." He said, "Go home, take a few days off, but don't talk about this to anyone." The crew he sent out there Thursday, they came back, said they didn't hear anything, said the rig was fine. They brought it back to the shop, said the only weird thing was the pipe we left in the ground had unscrewed itself and was lying next to the hole like someone had twisted it out. But there were no footprints, no tire tracks, no nothing. Just the pipe laid out straight like it had been placed there. Gentle. I moved out of Victoria 3 weeks later. I told my girlfriend I needed to be closer to my mom in Caldwell. But the truth was, I couldn't stand the city noises anymore. They all sounded like that voice. The traffic on 59, the trucks at, the stripes, the trains at night, they all had that same cadence, that same pleading tone. She said I was different. I wasn't sleeping. I was jumping at shadows. She didn't know the half of it. I was hearing Spanish words in my sleep. She recorded me on her phone one night. I was saying, Ayuda, Ayuda over and over, and another word that sounded like Goliad, but not quite, like I was saying it wrong in some older way. She played it for me, and I didn't recognize my own voice. It was too deep, too slow, like it was coming from underwater. I moved to Dimebox. It's quiet here. Real quiet population. 305 last census. And I thought the quiet would help, but it made it worse. Without the traffic, without the noise, I can hear it all the time. Not just at night, not just when I'm alone always. It's in the creak of this trailer. It's in the wind, through the mesquite trees. It's in the hum of the window unit AC. I installed last month. I went to a doctor in Bryan. He ran hearing tests. He said my hearing is perfect. Better than average, actually. I told him about the voices. He said it sounds like tinnitus, or maybe mild psychosis from stress. I said I'm not stressed. I'm scared there's a difference. He gave me pills. They didn't help. They just made it so I couldn't think straight. But the voice was still there, clear as ever. I called Jake last month. He's in Florida now, Pensacola. He moved there with his wife's family. He said he thought it would stop if he got near the ocean. He said the waves would cover it up. But he said it's worse there, he said. The ocean sounds like that voice, like every wave is saying the same thing. Ayuda, Ayuda. And he can hear it in the seashells. He said he went to a doctor too. They told him the same thing. Stress, anxiety, but he knows what we heard. He's a driller. He's been in the business 8 years. He's heard rocks. He's heard metal. He's heard seismic anomalies. And he said this was different. This was intentional. This was communication. Mr. Cerny called me 2 weeks ago. His number showed up on my phone and I almost didn't answer. I thought it was the voice calling me directly, but it was him. He said, Travis, you boys left something out here. I said, what did we leave? Ted, not equipment, something else. He said, the sinkhole started, again, last Tuesday, exactly 1 month after we drilled. He said it sank down 3 feet in the middle of the night, and the pipe we left behind it fell in, and the next morning it was back on the surface, laid out straight again. He said he called the sheriff. The sheriff came out and said it must be kids playing pranks, but Mr. Cerny said there are no kids out here for miles, and no tire tracks, no footprints, just that pipe and the humming. He said he can hear it now too, not just at the well, but in his house. At night, he said it comes through his old radio, the one his mama used to listen to religious programs on. He said it comes in clear as a bell, and it's always the same thing, that choir singing in Spanish but not Spanish. And he asked me what we did, what we woke up. I said, Mr. Cerny, I don't know. I swear to God I don't. No. I looked up the history of that land after he called. I know I said I wouldn't think about it, but I had to know. I looked up the Presidio La Bahia. It's only a few miles from where we drilled. I read about the massacre, March 27. 1,836 Santa Ana's troops executed 342 Texian soldiers there. They lined them up and shot them. The bodies were burned. Some were buried in mass graves. They think some of the graves were never found. They think some are still out there in unmarked ground. And I read that the soldiers, they weren't all from Texas. Some were from other states. Some were from Tennessee, from Kentucky, from places far away. And they died on that land. And the land is supposed to remember. I always thought that was poetic nonsense. But now I think it's real. I think the land doesn't just remember, I think it calls out. I think it wants something. But what does land want? I keep asking myself, what could dirt want? And I think maybe it wants to be heard, maybe it wants to be acknowledged. Maybe all those years of people farming on it and drilling through it and building on it like it was just empty space. Maybe it got tired of being treated like it was dead when it's not. It's alive. It's alive with what happened on it. And when we drilled that hole, we made a puncture. We made a wound. And that sound, that humming, that was the land's voice. That was all those voices from 1,836 coming up through that pipe like a straw. Like we gave them a way to speak again. And they said help. They said ayuda. Because they're still down there. They're still trapped in the limestone, in the clay, in the memory of the dirt. And they can't get out. And they want someone to know they're still there. I called Mr. Cerny back after I read that. I said, Mr. Cerny, I think you need to move. I said that land is haunted, not by ghosts, but by history. And he laughed, that old man. Laugh, he said. Son, I've lived here 70 years. I know what this Land is. He said it's hungry. He said it swallows things and doesn't give them back. He said his daddy told him never to drill past 150 feet on the north, 40. But he didn't listen. He needed the water. He said, sometimes you gotta choose between thirsty and crazy. And he chose thirsty, but now he thinks maybe he chose wrong. He said the humming is getting louder. He said last night he heard it in his bones, like his skeleton was vibrating. He said he saw that face in the window again, but this time it was downstairs looking out at the well site, and it wasn't alone. There were others with him, shadows, just shadows, but they had shapes like men with rifles, like soldiers lined up, and they were all humming that same note. I haven't told my mom any of this. She thinks I left Victoria because of the breakup. She thinks I'm just heartbroken. She doesn't know I'm scared of dirt. She doesn't know I can't walk on bare ground anymore. Without listening for that hum, I wear earplugs sometimes, but it doesn't help. Because it's not in my ears. It's in the bones of my skull. It's in the fluid of my spine. The doctor said, that's impossible. But doctors don't know everything. They don't know about land that remembers. They don't know about voices that travel through rock for 200 years. They don't know about what happens when you drill a hole and give the past a microphone. Jake called me again last night at 2 a.m. My time, 3 a.m. his time. He said, Travis, I can't take it anymore. He said he's been hearing it in the plumbing in his apartment building. He said all the pipes are connected and the voice travels. He said his wife thinks he's having a breakdown. She wants him to go to a hospital. He said he told her what happened, and she didn't believe him. She said it's stress from the move, but he knows it's not. He knows it's the same voice from that hole. He said he dreamt last night that he was back there at the well site, but the rig was gone. And there was just a hole, a perfect circle, black as oil. And he looked down into it, and he could see faces looking back up at him, hundreds of faces, and they were all saying the same thing, Ayuda. And he said one of them looked like me, Travis. He said, one of them looked like my face, but wrong, like it was my face if I'd died in 1836, like my face if I'd been shot and buried in limestone and left to hum for 200 years. I'm telling you this because it's 3:17 a.m. right now. I'm in my trailer in Dimebox, and I can hear it. I can hear it in the walls. This trailer is old. The insulation is thin, and I can hear the wind outside. But under the wind, there's that hum, that same note from the drill, that same voice from the ground. And sometimes I think, if I just answered it, if I just said I'm listening, if I just acknowledged that I hear them, maybe they'd stop. Maybe they'd let me go. But I'm scared if I answer. They'll know I'm here. They'll know I can hear them, and they'll want more. They'll want me to do something. I don't know what, but they want something, and I can't give it to them. I don't even know what it is. Wait, I forgot to tell you about the dog, Mr. Cerny's dog. It's a blue heeler named Blue Creative. I know, but that's his name. That dog would not come near the rig on Tuesday when we were drilling. Blue stayed by the truck the whole time, just whining and pacing. And Mr. Cerny said, that's weird. Blue's usually right underfoot, always trying to herd the equipment. He said, Blue started acting funny a week before we got there when they were clearing the brush for the pad. Blue wouldn't go into that area at all, just stood at the edge and barked at nothing. Mr. Cerny had to drag him over to the work site, and Blue just shook like he was cold, but it was 100 degrees out. I remember thinking that dog knows something we don't, and now I think that's true. I think animals hear things we can't. I think they hear the land breathing, they hear the memories moving under the surface, and they know when something's woke up that should have stayed asleep. The boss called me again yesterday. He said, the insurance company is investigating the rig. He said they found something weird in the pipe we left behind. He said there were vibrations recorded on the equipment's black box. That shouldn't be there. He said the frequency was 7.8 hertz. That's the same frequency as the Earth's natural resonance, the Schumann resonance. He said, it's the frequency the planet hums. at all the time. But this was different. It was modulated. It had patterns. He said an audio engineer looked at it and said it resembled human speech patterns, but slowed down by about 50 times. He said it was like listening to a record played at the wrong speed. He asked me again what I heard, and I told him. I told him everything, and he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Travis, I'm letting you go," he said. "Not because you did anything wrong, but because I can't have you telling this story to the other crews." He said it spreads. He said Jake called him last week, told him the same thing, and now 2 other guys who were on the retrieval crew said they're hearing humming in their trucks. He said, "It's like a contagion. Like once you know what to listen for, you can't stop listening." I think he's right. I think it's spreading. I think that hole is still open. I think that pipe is still a conduit, and the voices are traveling through the groundwater, through the aquifer, through the pipes and wells all over the county, I think. When you turn on your tap in Goliad County, you're hearing that hum faint, but it's there. I think when you shower, you're standing in water that remembers what happened in 1836. I think the whole county is infected with memory, and we were the ones who woke it up. We were the ones who drilled the hole that let it out. My mom called me tonight. She lives in Caldwell. She said the water tasted funny this week. She said it had a metallic taste, like blood, but not quite. I told her not to drink it. I told her to buy bottled water. She said, "Don't be silly." But I'm scared. I'm scared that it's reaching out, that it's spreading, that it wants more people to hear it, because maybe if enough people hear it, if enough people acknowledge it, maybe it can rest. Maybe it can stop. But I'm too scared to find out. I'm too scared to go back. I'm too scared to listen closer. Jake texted me a picture yesterday. It was his hand holding a glass of water, and he said, "Do you see it?" I said, "See what he said. Look at the water. Look at the surface." I zoomed in on the picture, and there were ripples in the water, like something was vibrating underneath the glass, but his hand was steady. The glass was on a table. There was no reason for ripples, but they were there. And they were in that pattern, that cadence, that same rhythm as the voices from the well. I called him, and I said, "Jake, you need to get out of Florida." He said, "Travis, I think it's too late. I think it's in me. Now I think I'm humming too." And he held the phone away from his mouth, and I could hear it. I could hear him humming that same note, that same voice, but it was coming from his throat, and it wasn't Jake's voice. It was older. I was sadder. It was saying Ayuda, and I hung up. I couldn't. Listen, I couldn't hear my friend become that thing, become that memory. I'm sitting here in Dimebox. It's 3:47 a.m. Now I've been talking for almost an hour. I can see the sun starting to lighten the sky out my east window. The night's almost over, but the voice isn't stopping. It's never stopping. It's in the dawn. It's in the morning. It's in the afternoon. It's in the midnight silence. It's always there. And I think I understand now. I think I know what it wants. It doesn't want help. Not really. It wants witnesses. It wants to be remembered. Not as history, not as a plaque on a wall, not as a date in a book, but as a living thing, as a present thing, as something that is still happening right now, under the ground, under the water, under the skin of everyone who hears it. The land in Goliad County is a mass grave, and we drilled into it, we gave it a voice, and now it won't be silent. It will never be silent. And I'm telling you this because you need to know. Because maybe you're in Texas. Maybe you're on land that remembers maybe your house is built on top of something that won't stay quiet. Maybe your water comes from a well that sings. And if you hear it, if you hear that hum, that voice, don't ignore it. Because ignoring it doesn't make it stop. It just makes it louder. It just makes it more insistent. It just makes it part of you. Until you're not just you anymore. You're also them. You're also 342 men who died in 1836. You're also the memory of limestone. You're also the voice in the water. You're also the hum in the pipes. I haven't paid my water bill in 2 months. They're gonna shut it off soon. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe I need to stop using water. Maybe I need to stop bathing, stop drinking, stop washing my clothes. Maybe if I stop using water, I'll stop hearing it, but I don't think so. I think it's in the air now. I think it's in the rain when it comes. I think it's in the dust when the wind blows. I think the whole state is humming now, and only some of us can hear it. And we're the ones who drilled the holes. We're the ones who listened. We're the ones who know, and we can't unknow it. We can't unhear it. We can't make it stop. My name is Travis Boudreau. I'm from Dimebox, Texas. I work as a water well driller. Or I did. I don't work anymore. I can't. I tried to go back to a job site last week, different ranch, different county, but I got out there and I heard the rig humming. And it sounded like that. Note it. I sounded like that voice. And I got in my truck. And I left. I didn't even call the boss. I just drove home. And I sat here in this trailer and I listened to the walls. And I knew I can't do this job anymore. I can't drill into the earth because the earth is full of voices and they're all asking for help and I can't help them. I can't do anything but listen and go crazy. It's 4:03 a.m. The sun's coming up. I can see the light on the mesquite trees outside my window. I should try to sleep, but I won't. I never sleep. Not really. I just close my eyes and I see that face in the window. I see that pipe vibrating. I see the ground pulsing. I hear that chorus saying, Ayuda, and I see Jake's face in that picture he sent. I see his hand holding that glass of water with the ripples. And I know I'm not the only one. I know this is spreading. I know that hole is still singing. And I know that land is still calling. And I know that nobody's coming to help because nobody believes you when you say the ground is talking. They just say you're crazy. They just say it's stress. They just say drink more water, take these pills, go to bed, but they don't know. They don't hear it. They haven't drilled into memory. They haven't given the past a voice. If you're listening to this, if you're reading this, if you know what I'm talking about, if you've heard it too, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry we woke it up. We didn't mean to. We were just doing our job. We were just drilling for water. We didn't know the water had memories. We didn't know the limestone was a library. We didn't know the aquifer was a mass grave. We didn't know. And now we know, and knowing doesn't help. It just makes you part of. It just makes you one more voice in the chorus. It just makes you one more memory the land holds on to, and someday someone will drill a well, and they'll hit 180 feet, and they'll hear me, they'll hear Jake, they'll hear Mr. Cerny, and they'll hear 342 men from 1,836 all saying Ayuda, all saying help, all saying remember us, and they won't know what to do either, and the cycle will start again and again and again, because the land doesn't forget. The land just waits and calls, and waits and calls and waits. I need to stop talking now. My voice is gone. My throat is dry. I'm going to drink some water from the bottle next to my bed. I bought it at the Dollar General in Dimebox. It's purified, they say. It's from a spring in Arkansas. I hope that's far enough away. I hope the voice is from Goliad. Haven't traveled that far. But when I twist the cap off, I can hear it, the hiss of the seal breaking, and underneath that, I can hear it, that hum, that voice saying Ayuda, saying help, saying, I'm still here. I'm always here. I'll never not be here, and I drink it anyway because I'm thirsty, because I'm human, because I need water to live. Even if the water is full of memory, even if the water is full of death, even if the water is singing to me in a voice that isn't mine, that will never be mine, that will never let me be just me again. My name is Travis Boudreau. I'm from Dimebox, Texas. I work as a water well driller. I don't sleep anymore. I don't dream anymore. I just listen. I just remember. I just wait for the day when I'll be the one calling up through a pipe to some driller who doesn't know any better. And I'll say Ayuda. And he'll hear me and he'll be scared. And he'll tell his partner. And his partner will hear it too. And they'll leave their rig. And they'll drive away. And they'll try to forget, but they won't be able to, because that's how it works. That's how it spreads. That's how the land gets you. It makes you part of its memory. It makes you part of its story. It makes you eternal. It makes you never die. Not really. You just become a voice in the ground, waiting for someone to drill deep enough to hear you, waiting for someone to listen, waiting for someone to understand that you can't help, you can only join, you can only become another voice, another memory, another reason for the land to hum, another reason for the water to remember. It's 4:17 a.m. I'm going to try to sleep now. I'm going to close my eyes, and I'm going to see that face in the window, and I'm going to hear those voices, and I'm going to feel that hum in my bones, and I'm going to know that I'm not crazy, I'm not stressed, I'm not imagining things. I'm just a man who drilled a hole in the wrong place at the wrong time and woke up something that should have stayed asleep. I'm a man who gave a mass grave, a voice, and now that voice is mine too. And I'm telling you this, so you know, so you understand. So, if you hear it, you know you're not alone. But also, so you know there's no help, there's no cure. There's no stopping it. There's only listening and waiting and hoping you don't go mad, but knowing that madness might be the only sane response to hearing the earth ask for help. And knowing you can't do anything but listen and pray that someday someone will drill a well and find a way to answer. To say we hear you, we remember you, we can help you rest. But I don't think that's possible. I don't think they want to rest. I think they just want to be heard forever. And ever and ever and ever and ever. My name's Ronnie Dale Cutter. I'm from Old Dimebox, Texas, out on the County Road 208 loop, where the pavement gave up back in '09, and I work as a fence post driver for ranchers. I swear to God I'm not making this up, and I don't care if you believe me, but I have to tell somebody, because my wife says I'm acting different, and my kids look at me like I'm a stranger, and I can't go back to work. And the money's running out, but I can't. I just can't. Listen, it was August 17th. I remember because it was my daughter's birthday, and I missed it because of this job. And I had breakfast at the Stripes in Caldwell, 2 sausage biscuits and a coffee that tasted like the pot hadn't been cleaned since Tuesday, and I was wearing my gray work shirt, the one with the hole in the left armpit that I keep meaning to sew, but never do. We punched in at the site at 6:47 a.m. Me and my coworker, Jared. He's from Giddings. Younger guy. Real quiet, but he works hard. Doesn't complain about the heat, like some of these kids do. The job was simple. Just replacing old barbed wire on a ranch out past Lexington. The Martinez place. They'd sold to some corporation that wanted to run cattle again. And the whole property was overgrown, hadn't been touched since '98, according to the deed. Mr. Martinez, the old man. He met us at the gate. He was wearing a straw hat that had seen better days, and he kept wiping his face with a red bandana, even though it wasn't hot yet. It was maybe 75 degrees, but you could feel it coming. That August weight that presses down on you around 10 in the morning and doesn't lift till sunset. He said the property line ran straight back to the creek, marked by a row of cedar posts that were mostly rotted, and we were to follow the survey markers, little orange flags that had been put in 2 weeks prior. He gave us the map, and it looked normal. Just a rectangle of land, 240 acres. Nothing weird about it. He left around 7:30. Said he had to get into town for a doctor's appointment, and told us to call if we needed anything, but the cell service out there was spotty at best. One bar that came and went, like it was playing hide and seek. We started at the northeast corner, where the old post was still standing, but leaning like a drunk man at last call. Jared was on the auger. I was on the driver, and we had the new posts in the truck. 50 of them. 8-foot treated pine. The first 2 hours were normal, man. Just the sound of the auger chewing through the clay, the thump of the driver, the metallic ring of the T-posts going in. We were sweating by 9. The sun was up and it was getting serious. And I remember thinking I should have brought more water because the cooler was already half empty. And it wasn't even noon. We stopped at 10:15 for a break, sat in the shade of the truck, ate the sandwiches our boss had packed, turkey and cheese on white bread, that was already getting soggy from the heat. Jared asked if I thought we'd finish by Friday, and I said probably. It was just straight lines, and the ground wasn't too rocky. Might even get done Thursday, if we pushed. We finished our break and went back to it, and that's when I noticed the windmill. It was one of those old air motor windmills, the kind you see all over Texas, metal blades, and a wooden tower, and it was maybe 100 yards west of us, near where the creek should be, but it was turning the wrong direction. Now, I know wind changes, I'm not stupid, but this was different. The wind was coming from the south. I could feel it on my face, hot and dry, but the windmill was turning clockwise when it should have been counterclockwise, like the wind was hitting it from the north instead. I pointed it out to Jared, and he just shrugged, said, maybe the wind was doing something weird up higher, but I could see it bothered him too, the way he kept looking back at it while he worked. We kept going, putting posts in every 10 feet, stretching the wire, stapling it to the posts. And I tried to forget about the windmill, but it was like a tooth that you can't stop touching with your tongue. Around 11:30, we reached the first survey marker, a little orange flag tied to a metal stake. And I checked the map, and it matched up. We were exactly where we were supposed to be. But the property line on the map showed a straight shot to the creek. And when I looked up, the creek wasn't where it should be. It was too far west, maybe 30 yards west. And that doesn't sound like much, but when you're looking at a survey map and the land in front of you, 30 yards is a different world. I called Jared over and showed him the map, and he looked at the creek, and he said maybe the creek had shifted. They do that, especially after droughts. And I wanted to believe him, but I couldn't, because the creek bed looked old, like it had been there for decades, with mature trees along its banks, not like something that had moved recently. We decided to trust the survey markers, not the map, because the markers are what you get paid to follow. So we kept putting posts in where the flags were. At 12:45, we stopped for lunch, sat in the truck with the AC blasting, and I noticed the odometer said we'd driven 2.3 miles from the gate to where we were, but according to the map, it should have been 1.8 miles. I mentioned it to Jared, and he got this look on his face, like he was doing math in his head and not liking the answer. And he said, maybe the truck's odometer was off, but I knew it wasn't. I'd just had it serviced last week and the mechanic said everything was running true. We ate in silence after that, the radio playing some country song I didn't recognize. And when we got out to go back to work, the heat hit me like a wall. It had to be 102, 103, that kind of heat that makes your vision shimmer at the edges. We worked through the afternoon, and I kept checking the map, and the line we were following didn't make sense anymore. The survey markers were in a straight line, but the land around them was wrong. There was a hill where there shouldn't be a hill, a gentle rise that wasn't on the map at all. And when we got to the top of it, we should have been able to see the truck, but we couldn't. It was just gone, swallowed up by the mesquite and the heat shimmer. Jared said we must have gotten turned around, but I knew we hadn't. You don't get turned around when you're walking a straight line with markers every 10 feet. He pulled out his phone to check the GPS, but it just showed a blank screen. No signal, no location, nothing. We kept walking, because what else were we supposed to do? And we found the next marker, and the next, and they were all there, all in a line. But the land between them was different every time. One stretch would be flat and open. The next would be thick with brush, like we'd crossed into a different county. Then it would be rocky like the hill country. Then it would be sandy like the coast, all within 100 yards of each other. I started feeling dizzy, not from the heat, but from the wrongness of it, like my brain couldn't process what my eyes were seeing. Around 2:30, we reached the creek, or what was supposed to be the creek, but it was dry, just a cracked mud bed with dead fish skeletons in it. And that couldn't be right, because the satellite photos from 2 weeks ago showed water, clear as day. The boss had shown us. Jared knelt down and touched the mud, and it crumbled to dust in his fingers, like it had been dry for years. And he looked up at me, and his face was white under his tan, and he said, we needed to go back to the truck. I agreed, man. I was ready to call it a day. But when we turned around, The survey markers were gone. Not just the flags, but the stakes too. All of them. Every single one we'd been following. The land behind us was smooth, untouched, no post holes, no footprints, nothing. I could see our footprints in the dust ahead of us, leading to where we were. But behind us, it was like we'd never been there. Jared started walking back the way we'd come. Fast, almost running. And I followed him. And we walked for what felt like 10 minutes. But we should have reached the truck in 3. And it wasn't there. The land was flat and empty. Just grass and mesquite and that damn windmill still turning the wrong way in the distance. I called out to Jared, and he stopped. And he was breathing hard. Not from exertion, but from panic. And he said we must have gotten turned around. We must have walked the wrong direction, but I pointed to our footprints, and he couldn't argue with that. We followed them back, carefully, stepping in our own steps. And they led us in a straight line to a fence post that wasn't ours. An old cedar post with rotting wire on it. And beyond that was a road I'd never seen. A dirt road that wasn't on the map. Running perpendicular to where the property line should be. I heard a sound then. A low hum. Like a transformer or a generator. But there was nothing out here. No power lines. No buildings. Just that road. And the windmill. And the wrongness. Jared said he was going to follow the road. Said it had to lead somewhere. And I grabbed his arm and told him no. We had to stay put. We had to wait for someone to find us. But he was scared. Man, I could see it in his eyes, and he shook me off and started walking down that road. And I watched him go, and the dust kicked up behind his boots, and then he was just gone. Not like he walked around a bend or over a hill. Just gone. Like the air swallowed him. 1 second he was there, the next there was just dust settling and no Jared. I stood there for I don't know how long. Maybe a minute. Maybe 10. And I called his name, but there was no answer. Just that hum getting louder. And I started walking back the way we'd come, following our footprints again. And this time they led me straight to the truck. Like they'd been rearranged while I wasn't looking. The truck was there. Right where we'd left it. But the time on the dash said 3:47 p.m. And my watch said 4:12 p.m. And my phone was dead, even though it had been at 80% battery at lunch. I got in the truck and locked the doors and sat there with the AC on full blast. And I could see the survey markers again. All of them. In a perfect line leading back to the creek. And the creek had water in it now. Clear running water. And the hill was gone. And the road was gone. And everything looked exactly like the map said it should. I waited for Jared. Waited until the sun started going down. And he never came back. I called his phone and it went straight to voicemail. And I called the boss and told him what happened. And he said he'd call the Martinez family and get someone out there. And I should wait. I waited until it was dark. And then I drove back to the gate. And the gate was locked, chained, and padlocked. And I know we hadn't locked it. I know we left it open. But there it was, locked tight. And I had to climb the fence to get out, tearing my jeans on the barbed wire. I drove to the boss's house, and he was there with Mrs. Martinez. And she said they'd never sold the property. They'd never even met me. And Mr. Martinez had died in 2016. I showed her the work order, and she looked at it and said that wasn't her signature. And the phone number on the order was disconnected. And when I called it right there in front of her, it was a funeral home in Temple. The boss fired me on the spot. Said I'd been drinking or using. But I don't do that stuff. Man, I swear to God I don't. Jared's parents filed a missing person report. And the police searched the property. And they found his truck parked at a Whataburger in Bastrop. And his phone was in the driver's seat. And the security footage showed him buying a burger at 2:30 p.m., the same time we were supposedly out on the property. He never came home, though, and they can't find him. And I don't know if he's lost, or if he was ever really there with me at all. I wake up at night, and I can hear that hum, that low transformer hum, and I look out my window, and the streetlights don't look right. They're too far apart. And the numbers on my house keep changing. 207, 208, 209. And I don't know which one is real. I don't go outside after dark anymore because I'm afraid the ground will be different when I step on it. And I don't trust maps. And I don't trust time. And I don't trust my own memory because what if I'm the one who's wrong? What if I'm the anomaly? My wife says I stare at nothing for hours. And she's right. I'm staring at the space between things, trying to see if it's shifting, trying to catch it in the act. The other day I found a survey marker in my backyard, one of those orange flags, tied to my clothesline. And I don't know how it got there. And I don't want to know, but I can't bring myself to touch it. I called in sick to my new job, a warehouse gig in Bryan, because I got there, and the building looked different than it had the day before. The loading dock was on the wrong side, and I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes trying to convince myself. I was just confused, but I wasn't. Man, I know what I saw. The property changed while I was looking at it, and now I think it's following me. Or maybe I'm still on it. Maybe I never left. Maybe I'm walking in circles, and my house is just another part of the Martinez ranch that looks like a house, and my wife is just another marker, and my kids are just echoes. I'm telling you this because I don't know what else to do, and because maybe if I say it enough it'll make sense, but it doesn't. It never does. And I'm scared that the next time I blink everything will be different again, and I won't remember what it was supposed to be. I keep the map from that day in my truck, folded up in the glove box. And sometimes I take it out and look at it. And the lines are different every time. The property gets bigger. The creek moves. The roads change. And I know it's the same map. I know it is, but it isn't. Nothing is the same, man. Nothing stays where you put it. And I think that's the worst part. The not knowing if it's the world or if it's me, and I don't think I want to know the answer. Because either way, I'm lost. I haven't slept more than 2 hours a night since it happened, and when I do sleep, I dream about that windmill, turning the wrong way. Turning and turning. And I can hear Jared's voice in the hum, asking me which way is north. And I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. The last thing I remember from that day, the real last thing, is standing at the truck and looking back at the property and seeing a figure standing where Jared had disappeared. Just a shape. Not moving, and I know it wasn't him because it was too tall, way too tall, and it didn't have a shadow, and the dust wasn't settling around it. It was just hanging there, suspended, like the air had forgotten how to be air. I got in the truck and I drove, and I didn't look in the rearview mirror until I was on the highway, and when I did, there was nothing behind me, just empty road. But I could still feel it. I can still feel it now. Like something standing right behind my shoulder. And when I turn around, there's nothing there, but the feeling doesn't go away. It just moves. It just repositions. And I think that's what it does. It moves things. It repositions them. It takes what should be here and puts it there. And it takes people and puts them somewhere else. And I'm afraid that someday I'm going to wake up and my wife will be gone and there will be a survey marker in her place. And I'll know it's her, but I won't be able to prove it. And I'll be alone with the hum and the shifting ground and the windmill that turns the wrong way forever. I tried to go to church last Sunday. Thought maybe it would help. But the pews were in the wrong place. The altar was on the left instead of the right. And I sat in the back and I cried because I couldn't tell if it had always been like that or if it had changed while I was singing the hymns. The pastor came up to me after and asked if I was okay, and I said yes. I said I was just tired. But I wanted to ask him if he remembered how the church was supposed to be laid out. If he was sure, absolutely sure, that it hadn't changed, but I didn't. Because I was scared of what his answer would be. I'm scared of everything now, man. Scared of maps and clocks and windmills and empty fields and locked gates and survey markers and my own shadow, because sometimes it falls the wrong way. Sometimes it points toward the sun instead of away from it. And I don't know how that's possible, but I see it. I swear to God, I see it. The other night, I got up to get a glass of water and the kitchen was on the wrong side of the house. The sink was where the stove should be, and I stood there for 5 minutes trying to remember if it had always been like that. And when I went back to bed, my wife asked why I was sleeping on the couch. And I told her I wasn't. I was in bed, but she said I'd been on the couch all night, and I looked and there was a pillow and blanket there, and I don't remember putting them there. I don't remember any of it. That's how it gets you, man. It doesn't just change the world. It changes you. It changes your memory. It makes you doubt the one thing you have to hold on to. And once that's gone, you're just floating. You're just another piece of dust that the wind moves from one place to another, and you don't even know you're being moved. I think about Jared every day, wonder if he's somewhere thinking the same thing, wondering if I'm real, wondering if he ever worked with me, or if I was just some voice in his head while he was disappearing. The police said there was no sign of struggle at the Whataburger. He just bought his food and walked out and vanished. And his truck was found in the parking lot, with the keys in the ignition and the engine still running, like he'd just stepped out for a second, and the world had repositioned him while he wasn't looking. That's what it does. I'm telling you, it waits for you to blink. It waits for you to look away, and then it moves things. It moves people. It moves whole properties, and you can't prove it because the proof moves too. I still have the work order. I keep it in a box under my bed, and sometimes I take it out, and I look at Mrs. Martinez's signature, and it's different every time. The loops are different. The pressure is different. And I know it's the same paper, but it isn't. It's been repositioned. It's been rewritten by hands that aren't human. Hands that belong to the thing that moves things. I don't know what it is, man. I don't know if it's the land or the air or something that lives in the space between places. But it's real. It's so real. And it's still happening. It's happening right now as I'm talking to you. My trailer is shifting. I can feel it. The walls are in different places than they were when I started this story. And I'm scared to look up because I don't want to see what's really here. I don't want to know what's been repositioned while I was confessing. I'm going to stop talking now because I'm afraid that if I keep going, I'll talk myself right out of existence. I'll reposition my own words until they don't mean anything. And then I won't be able to tell anyone. I won't be able to warn you. And you need to be warned, man. You need to know that the world isn't solid. It isn't fixed. It's just waiting for you to look away so it can move, so it can take what you love and put it somewhere else. And you'll never find it again. You'll never find anything again. You'll just walk in circles, following survey markers that disappear behind you, and footprints that lead nowhere, and maps that lie, and clocks that lie, and your own mind that lies because it's been repositioned too. I'm telling you this because I have to. Because someone has to know. But I don't think it matters. I don't think anything matters anymore. Because the world has already changed while you were listening, and you won't even notice until you try to find something you left in the place it's supposed to be. And it's gone, man. It's just gone. My name's Rex Calhoun. I'm from Jester, Texas, and I work as a wind turbine technician. I need to tell somebody this before I forget again which version happened. That's the thing, man. I'm not even sure I'm telling this to you right now, or if I'm just rehearsing it for the 5th time because I keep looping back to this same cracked phone screen and this same trailer with the same damn leak in the roof that I've been meaning to fix since last March. I swear to God I'm trying to keep this straight, but my head ain't right no more and I don't think it ever will be again. I used to think I was good with time. You know, like I could feel it moving steady. I wore a watch my dad gave me. Nothing fancy. Just a Timex that kept perfect time for 19 years. And now, it's just a hunk of metal that can't decide if it's Tuesday or next week. I had a breakfast burrito from the Stripe station in Floydada that morning. The one with the green salsa that's so hot it makes your ears ring. I remember that part clear as anything, which is how I know the rest has to be real too, even if it don't make sense. I wore my gray work shirt with the oil stain on the left sleeve from when I overfilled the truck last month. And I had my steel toes that pinch my right foot, because my left foot's a half size bigger, and I can never keep that straight. When I'm buying them online, I punched in at 4:47 a.m. exactly because the dawn shift pays an extra $3 an hour and I was saving up to fix that roof. The sky was that specific color, that bruised purple that happens right before the sun starts thinking about showing up. And I remember thinking how peaceful it looked stretched out over those fields. The wind farm is 15 miles outside Jester, which is already 20 miles from anything anybody would call a town. And I was the only tech scheduled for the dawn rounds, because Dave called in sick with his kidney stones again, and Maria was on vacation down to Port Aransas with her kids. Just me and 47 turbines standing out there like giant metal skeletons praying to a god that don't answer. I drove my F-150 down that dirt service road, the one that gets so washboarded in the summer that your teeth chatter if you go over 15. And I could see turbine 23 blinking its maintenance light. That was my first stop. Always is. Because that particular unit's been finicky since they installed it in 2019. And the company is too cheap to replace the gearbox when they can just keep patching it. I pulled up at 5:13 according to the dash clock, and that's when I should have known something was already wrong because the clock on my phone said 4:58 and my watch said 5:02. I figured the dash clock was off. You know, trucks get weird when the battery's low on juice. So I didn't think nothing of it. I grabbed my tool bag and my thermos, the blue one with the dent in the side from when I dropped it off the nacelle last year. And I started the climb, 120 feet straight up the ladder inside the tower. And I know every rung by heart. I could climb that thing in my sleep, which is maybe what I was doing, but I swear to you I wasn't asleep. I was awake and alert, and I had that burrito sitting heavy in my stomach, and I could feel every step. About halfway up, I stopped to catch my breath like I always do. There's a little platform there where you can stand and look out the window at the fields. And I noticed the sky wasn't changing. It was still that bruised purple, not getting lighter, not getting darker, just stuck. I remember checking my watch again, and it said 5:14, and I thought maybe the battery was dying in it too because I'd been climbing for what felt like 10 minutes, but the time barely moved. I kept going up. When I got to the nacelle, that's the big box at the top, where all the machinery lives. I set my tool bag down on the catwalk, and that's when I saw it. My thermos, the exact same blue thermos with the exact same dent, sitting right there next to the gearbox housing. And I know what you're thinking. I left it there from the day before. Or, Dave left his, but no, man. No. I had mine in my hand. I could feel the weight of it. And the one on the catwalk had the same sticker on it from the Lubbock Gun Show last September. 2 identical thermoses. I stood there staring at them, and I could hear my own breathing getting loud in that small space. And then the one in my hand wasn't there anymore. I didn't drop it. I didn't set it down. It just wasn't there. And the one on the catwalk was the only one. I checked my watch and it said 5:02. The dash clock in my truck 200 feet below said 4:58. My phone said 5:27, 3 different times, and none of them agreeing. And the sky still that same purple outside the vents. I should have climbed down right then. I should have gotten in my truck and drove straight home and called my boss and said I was sick, said I quit, said anything but what I did. But I didn't. I told myself I was seeing things, that the light in the nacelle plays tricks, and maybe I'd left that thermos up there yesterday and forgot. Even though I never forget. Even though I'm the guy who remembers serial numbers on bolts and which turbines need extra grease and the exact torque specs for every model we service. I'm telling you, I'm careful. I'm the guy who triple checks everything. So I started the inspection. I was checking the gearbox temperature readings and the vibration sensors, logging everything in the tablet like I'm supposed to. And when I pulled up the maintenance log for turbine 23, there were entries already logged for today. In my handwriting, the note said, gearbox temp normal, slight vibration on input shaft, recommend monitoring, and they were time-stamped for 6:45 a.m. I hadn't written that. I was standing there at what my watch now said was 5:09 a.m., reading a log from an hour and a half in the future. I scrolled down and there were more entries. Every 15 minutes. All the way up to 8 a.m. All in my handwriting. All describing work I hadn't done yet. I tried to close the app and reopen it, but the entries were still there. I tried to delete them, but the tablet wouldn't let me. Said I didn't have authorization to modify logged data. I set the tablet down and backed away from it like it was a snake. And I stood there in that nacelle, with the wind humming through the vents and the machinery, making its normal groaning sounds. And I could feel something in my chest like ice, water spreading out from my heart. I looked out the viewport at the fields, and the sky was still purple. Not dawn, not night, just dusk. I checked my phone again, and it said 3:12 a.m. My watch said 5:15. The tablet said 6:47. I grabbed the handrail because the world tilted sideways for a second, and I thought I was going to be sick right there on the catwalk. I remember thinking about the burrito and how maybe the green salsa had gone bad. Maybe I had food poisoning, and that's why everything was wrong, but I knew that wasn't it. Food poisoning don't make your own handwriting appear on a company tablet. I decided to climb down. I didn't finish the inspection. I just grabbed my tool bag and started down the ladder. About 30 feet down, I heard something above me. Footsteps. Heavy work boots on the metal catwalk. I stopped climbing and looked up through the center of the tower, and I could see a shape moving up there. A person shape. And I called out, "Dave, that you?" Because maybe he decided to come in after all. Maybe his kidney stones passed. But the shape didn't answer. It just stood there at the top of the ladder looking down, and I couldn't make out a face. Just a dark shape against the light from the nacelle. And then it started climbing down. I could hear each boot hitting each rung, slow and deliberate. And I started climbing faster. My hand slipped on a rung and I almost fell, but I caught myself. And I kept going down, and the footsteps kept following. I got to the bottom door and I shoved it open, and I practically fell out onto the gravel pad. I slammed the door shut behind me, and I stood there breathing hard. And I realized I'd left my tool bag up there. I always bring my tools down, always. But I dropped them somewhere in my hurry, and now they were up in that nacelle with whatever was following me. I got in my truck and I locked the doors, and I looked up at the tower. The maintenance light was still blinking. The sky was still purple. My phone said 2:47 a.m. My watch said 5:18. I started the truck and I drove to Turbine 19, my next scheduled stop, because I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't call my boss and say the turbines were haunted. Couldn't call Maria because she was on vacation. Couldn't call Dave because he was probably still puking from his kidney stones. So I just kept to the schedule like a fool. Turbine 19 is 2 miles east, down a service road that cuts through the Mitchell Ranch, and I could see the cattle out there in the fields, but they weren't moving. They were just standing frozen, not grazing, not shifting, just statues in the dawn that wouldn't come. I pulled up and the maintenance light was blinking, but when I checked the tablet, it showed Turbine 19 as fully operational. No issues logged. No maintenance required. I looked up at the tower and the light was definitely blinking. That red LED that means call a tech. But the tablet showed green across the board. I got out of the truck and I stood there, and I swear to God I could feel the air humming. Not from the turbines. Those were all locked down for maintenance. But from the space between things. The air itself was vibrating like a guitar string tuned too tight. I walked around the base of Turbine 19 and I found footprints in the dust. My boots, same tread pattern, same size, leading from the tower door to my truck and back again. But I hadn't gotten out yet. I had just pulled up. The footprints were already there, and when I knelt down to look closer, I could see they were fresh, the edges still sharp, like I'd made them minutes ago. But I hadn't. I was just now arriving. I followed the footprints with my eyes, and they led to the tower door. And the door was standing open about 6 inches. I always close them, always lock them. Company policy says an unsecured turbine is a liability. But there it was, open. I pushed it the rest of the way and called inside. "Hello? Anybody in there?" And my voice sounded flat, like the air was eating the sound. No answer. I climbed up anyway. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I was having a stroke, and if I just kept doing my job, it would all snap back to normal. I climbed Turbine 19, and when I got to the nacelle, my tool bag was sitting there, the one I'd left in Turbine 23. I know it was the same one because it has my initials scratched into the handle, RC, and a red paint smear from when I helped my nephew paint his bike frame last Christmas. It was my tool bag, and it was here, 2 miles away, and I knew I hadn't brought it. I opened it, and all my tools were there, all in the right pockets, all accounted for. I sat down on the catwalk and I checked my watch and it said 5:22. My phone said 4:03. The tablet said 7:30. And outside the viewport, the sky was still that same bruised purple. Not getting lighter. Not getting darker. I started crying then. I'm not ashamed to say it. I just sat there in that nacelle with my tool bag, and I cried because time was broken, and I didn't know how to fix it. I cried for maybe 5 minutes, maybe an hour, maybe 3 seconds. I have no idea. Then I stood up, and I looked at the maintenance log for turbine 19, and there were entries for the whole day, every 15 minutes, all in my handwriting, describing work I hadn't done. The last entry was timestamped for 11:45 p.m. and it just said, "Rex, stop looping. Rex, please stop." I didn't write that. I know I didn't write that, but it was my handwriting, and it was there on the screen. I closed the app and I opened it again and the entries were gone. The whole day was blank, except for the automated system checks. I climbed down from turbine 19, and I drove back to the main office, which is a double-wide trailer on the south end of the property. I didn't stop at any other turbines. I just drove. The cattle were still frozen in the fields. The sky was still purple. I got to the office at what my watch said was 5:30 a.m. and I tried to call my boss, but the phone just rang and rang. I tried to call my wife, but it went straight to voicemail after one ring. I sat in that office, and I pulled up the security footage from the cameras they have on each turbine, just little webcams that point at the doors to catch vandalism, and I scrolled back to 5:13 a.m., the time I arrived at turbine 23. The footage showed me pulling up. It showed me getting out of my truck. It showed me walking to the tower, and then it showed me walking to the tower again, from a different angle, like there were two of me. One me went inside at 5:13. The other me stood by the truck until 5:47, and then went inside. I fast-forwarded to 5:47, and I watched myself climb out of the tower, get in my truck, and drive away. But I hadn't done that. I was still inside. I was watching a version of me that hadn't happened yet, or had already happened, or was happening right now. I pulled up the live feed from turbine 23, and the camera showed the tower door standing open and my truck parked out front. But I was in the office. I'd been in the office for 20 minutes. I grabbed the keys to the company truck, the white F-250 with the busted radio, and I drove out to turbine 23 again. My truck was still there, parked exactly where I'd left it. The door was still open. I walked up to my truck, and I looked inside, and my thermos was in the cup holder, the blue one, with the dent. I picked it up and I felt the weight of it, and I knew it was the real one, the one I'd brought with me. But I also knew it was the one I'd left in the nacelle. I looked up at the tower, and I could see a shape in the nacelle window, looking down at me. I couldn't see a face, just a silhouette, but it was wearing a gray work shirt, and it had its hand raised like it was waving. I didn't wave back. I got in my truck, and I drove. I didn't go back to the office. I didn't finish my shift. I just drove home to Jester, which is a wide spot on Highway 70 with maybe 40 people living there, and I pulled into my driveway and I sat in my truck for I don't know how long. The sky was still purple. It was still purple. At what my watch said was 6 a.m., and what my phone said was 9:15 p.m., and what the microwave inside the house said when I finally went in was 12, just flashing 12 over and over like it had never been set. My wife was asleep on the couch with the TV on, and I tried to wake her, but she wouldn't wake up. She was breathing, but she wouldn't open her eyes. And I could see the clock on the TV guide channel said 3:00 a.m., but the sun should have been up hours ago, and it wasn't. I sat down in my recliner and I watched the TV, and the shows were all ones I remembered from when I was a kid. Shows that don't play anymore. And I realized I was watching a rerun of a day that had already happened or hadn't happened yet. I got up and I went to the bedroom and I lay down and I closed my eyes, and when I opened them again it was still dark outside, and the clock said 4:47 a.m., and I could smell that burrito from the Stripe station, and I was wearing my gray work shirt with the oil stain. I got out of bed and I went to the truck and I drove to the wind farm, and I punched in at 4:47 a.m. I drove to turbine 23. The maintenance light was blinking. I climbed the ladder. My thermos was on the catwalk. The log showed entries from 6:45 a.m. I climbed down. I heard footsteps. I drove away. I came home. The sky never changed. I've done this loop I don't know how many times. Sometimes I catch it early and sometimes I don't figure it out until I'm sitting in the nacelle reading my own handwriting from the future or the past. Sometimes I try to break it. I drove to Amarillo once. Just kept driving past the turn for Jester. But the sky stayed purple. And when I looked at the clock, it said 4:47 a.m. And I was back in my driveway. I've called in sick, but the phone just rings. I've quit my job, but the next morning I'm punching in again. I've thrown away that blue thermos 6 times, but it's always back in my cup holder. I don't eat breakfast burritos anymore because the smell makes me sick. I don't wear my gray shirt because the stain looks like a face if you stare at it too long. I moved my family to Lubbock last month. Got a new job at a diesel repair shop. But I still wake up at 4:47 a.m. and I can smell that green salsa. And I know if I look out the window, the sky will be bruised purple. The watch my dad gave me is in a drawer and I won't look at it. My phone shows 3 different times, depending on which app you open. My wife says I talk in my sleep now. Long conversations with someone named Rex. And I tell her that's me. I'm Rex. But she says the voice doesn't sound like me. It sounds like me trying to sound like me but getting it wrong. I don't go to the wind farm anymore. I quit. I know I quit. But last Tuesday I found a wrench in my toolbox that has my initials on it and a red paint smear, and I know I left that wrench in turbine 23 100 loops ago. I hear boots on metal sometimes when I'm alone in the shop. That same sound from the ladder. Slow and deliberate. I see footprints in dust that I know I didn't make. I found a maintenance log on my work computer last week. Just a blank document. But when I scrolled down, there was one entry at the bottom. Rex, stop looping. Rex, please stop. I deleted it, but it came back. I'm telling you this because maybe if I write it down outside the loop, it won't happen again. But I know that's a lie. I'm telling you because I'm scared that one of these times I'm going to climb up that ladder and find myself already up there waiting. And I'm not sure which one of us will be the real one. I'm scared that the sky will never be anything but purple again. I'm scared that time broke and I was standing in the place where it snapped. The Jester wind farm is still out there. 47 turbines, spinning in a wind that never changes because the atmosphere is stuck, just like I am. I called the company last week from a payphone in Lubbock, used a fake name, asked if they were hiring techs for the Floyd County site. The woman said they weren't, that the site had been decommissioned in 2020. I said that couldn't be right because I'd worked there just last year. She said, no, sir. That property's been empty for 3 years. Turbines don't even spin there anymore. I drove out there yesterday just to prove her wrong. The service road was grown over with weeds. The turbines were still there, but they weren't spinning, and the paint was peeling, and the office trailer had a padlock on the door that looked like it had been there for years. But turbine 23 had a fresh set of tire tracks leading up to it. And the maintenance light was blinking. And the door was open 6 inches. I didn't get out of the truck. I just sat there in that bruised purple light that still hasn't changed since that morning, that one morning that keeps happening over and over. And I watched the tower through my windshield until I couldn't stand it anymore, and I drove home. The wrench with the red paint is on my nightstand now. I didn't put it there. I don't know how it got there. I throw it away, and it comes back. I bury it in the backyard, and it's on my pillow. I sink it in the Brazos River, and it's in my coffee cup. I'm telling you this because I think I'm the message now. I think I'm the evidence that can't be explained. I think time folded and I got caught in the crease, and now I'm the thing that moves when you're not looking. I'm the sound that comes from nowhere. I'm the pattern that repeats with impossible precision. My name's Rex Calhoun. I'm from Jester, Texas, and I work as a wind turbine technician. I punch in at 4:47 a.m. I climb the ladder. I find my thermos. I read the logs. I climb down. I hear the boots. I drive home. The sky is purple. I'm telling you this at 3 a.m. Because that's the only time that feels real anymore. This liminal space between what was and what will be and what keeps happening anyway. I'm telling you because I think maybe if you read this, you'll see the signs in your own life. The little time slips. The objects that move. The version of you that seems to be running ahead or falling behind. I'm telling you because I can't stop looping. And maybe you can. Don't take the dawn shift. Don't climb the ladder. Don't trust the clocks. The bruised purple sky is a warning. The blinking light is a trap. The footprints in the dust are your own. But you haven't made them yet. I'm telling you because I'm scared that one day I'm gonna wake up and it's gonna be 4:47 a.m. and I'm gonna be in 2 places at once and then 3 and then 4 and then I'm gonna be the whole wind farm. I'm going to be every turbine spinning in that frozen sky. I'm going to be the footsteps and the thermos and the wrench with the red paint smear. I'm telling you because I don't know how to end this story. It doesn't end. It just loops. It just folds back on itself. I'm still shaking. I'm still climbing. I'm still punching in. I'm still telling you this. I'm still. My name's Travis Kowalski. I'm from Silsbee, Texas, and I work as a pipeline welder. I'm telling you this now because I don't know who else to tell, and if I don't say it out loud, I'm pretty sure it's going to eat a hole straight through my chest. I got transferred off that crew 3 months ago, but it doesn't matter, man, it follows you. Not like physically, I guess maybe physically too, but mostly it's just this thing that lives in your head now, and anytime you hear a certain sound or feel a certain kind of heat on your neck, you're right back there. I'm getting ahead of myself. Listen, I need you to understand this wasn't some horror movie setup, this was just a Tuesday. It was a Tuesday. I remember because that's when the new schedule drops and I was looking at my phone eating a breakfast taco from that place on Highway 96, the one with the lady who always gives you extra salsa packets even if you don't ask. I was wearing my gray work shirt, the one with the stain on the cuff from last week's hydraulic fluid that won't come out no matter what I do. I got my steel toes on. The left one has that weird squeak when it gets hot. It was hot. July in East Texas hot, where the air feels like you're breathing through a wet rag, and your sunglasses fog up the second you step outside. I drive a 09F 250. White. Dense. On the passenger side. From when my ex-wife backed into the mailbox. Still runs like a dream though. I had the radio on 92.5 playing that same country song they play every morning. And I was thinking about whether I needed to stop for gas when the call came in. Dispatch. They needed a 2-man crew to go check a pressure anomaly on Pipeline 6. Section M. That's out past the old paper mill. Way out where the pine trees get thick. And the cell service goes to die. Junior was riding with me that week. Not his real name, obviously, but everyone calls him Junior because his dad was a welder too, and he's got that same look about him. Kid's 22, fresh out of training, still gets excited about overtime. I picked him up at his mom's place in Councey. He's living there until he saves up for his own place. He gets in the truck smelling like that cheap body spray, and he's got this big thermos of coffee his mom made him. We talk about the Astros game from the night before. About how his sister's baby is doing. About nothing important. That's what I remember most. How none of it was important. We get out to the site around 9:30. The sun is already white in the sky, and the pipeline markers are just these little yellow posts sticking up out of the dirt like gravestones. I got my clipboard. Junior's carrying the pressure gauge kit. And we're just walking the line like we've done 1,000 times. The anomaly is supposed to be near valve station 6M42. That's what the work order says. Valve station 6M42. Pressure reading inconsistent with flow patterns. Should be a simple check. Maybe a faulty sensor. Maybe some debris in the line. Takes 2 hours max. Then we're back in the truck with the AC blasting. And maybe we stop for lunch at that BBQ place in Evadale. That was the plan. I remember the plan because I kept thinking about that pulled pork sandwich the whole time we were walking. We get to where the GPS says 6M42 should be, and there's nothing there. Just pine straw and red dirt and that hum of cicadas that sounds like electricity. I check my coordinates 3 times. Junior's looking at his phone too, and he's like, maybe it's buried. Maybe the marker fell. That happens sometimes. These valves are underground. You access them through these steel casings that stick up about a foot. So we're walking back and forth, pacing out the distance from the last known marker. And that's when I hear it. The radio. I've got my handheld on my belt, the company issue Motorola, and it crackles. Not static, not like normal static, but this kind of wet crackle, like someone breathing with a chest cold. Then I hear my own voice. I swear to God, I hear my own voice coming through that speaker saying, "Check the upstream side." Clear as day. My voice. But I didn't say anything. Junior's right next to me and he looks at me weird and he's like, "Did you say something?" And I'm telling him, "No, man, that was the radio." He says he didn't hear anything, just static. But I heard it. I heard my own voice telling me to check the upstream side like I'm giving myself instructions. I laugh it off because what else are you going to do? Sun's getting higher, sweat's running down my back, and I figure maybe I'm just tired. Didn't sleep great the night before. My neighbor's dog was barking at nothing until 2 a.m. So we keep looking. Junior finds it. He's about 50 feet north of where the GPS says it should be, and he's yelling, "Hey, Travis, come look at this." I walk over and there's the casing. Just like any other casing. But the number on it is wrong. It's not 6M42. It's just 6M. No number after it. Just 6M stamped into the metal in these block letters that look older than they should. The paint's different too. Most of them are yellow. This one's more of a rust color. Like it was red once, but the sun baked it brown. I get on the radio to call it in to dispatch. I say we've located the valve, but the designation is off, requesting clarification. There's this long pause, like longer than normal. Then the dispatcher. Her name's Linda. Usually she's real quick with the responses. She says, "Travis, we show 6M42 at your coordinates. Can you confirm the reading?" I tell her, "Yeah, we're at the coordinates, but the valve says 6M, not 6M42. Another long pause. She's typing. I can hear her keyboard clicking. She says, "Travis, there's no valve designated 6M in the system. That's not a valid code." I look at Junior, and he's already got the cap off the casing. He's looking down into the access tube. He looks up at me and his face is pale. Like actually pale under his tan. And he says, "Travis, this valve is open." I tell him that's impossible. The whole section is supposed to be shut down for maintenance. The line is depressurized. He just shakes his head and steps back from the casing, like it's hot. I look down there, and sure enough, the wheel is turned all the way open. The pressure gauge on the side is showing 120 pounds per square inches. But Linda just told me the system shows that line is at 0. I get back on the radio and I'm trying to keep my voice steady. I say, "Dispatch, we're showing pressure on site. Can you confirm system reading?" She comes back all confused, says, "Travis, system shows Section M isolated. No flow, 0 pressure. You're looking at a deadline." Junior's got his own gauge out now. He's hooking it up to the test port, and his hands are shaking. The gauge spikes immediately, 120 pounds per square inches steady. I can hear it now too. This low hum coming up from the pipe. Not the normal sound of gas moving. This is different. This is like a voice, like when you hum with your mouth closed, but it's coming from steel and earth. Linda's still on the radio asking for our readings, and I give them to her, and she just goes quiet. Then she says, "Travis, I'm going to need you to document that valve and wait for the engineering supervisor to call you back. Do not attempt to close it. Do not touch anything. Just wait." I ask her how long, and she says she doesn't know. That's not like Linda. Linda always knows. Junior sits down on a stump and lights a cigarette, which he's not supposed to do anywhere near the line. But I don't say anything because I get it. I want one too, even though I quit 2 years ago. We wait. The sun moves across the sky, and that hum just keeps going. It doesn't change pitch, doesn't get louder or softer. It's just this constant tone that sits right behind your teeth. I start noticing other sounds, boots on gravel, but when I look around, there's nothing. Just those pine trees. Junior hears it too. I can tell by the way his head keeps snapping around. He asks me if I think there's another crew out here, and I tell him no. Man, we're the only ones scheduled for this section. But the sound is there, clear as anything. Heavy work boots, the kind with the steel shanks, crunching on gravel, walking in a circle around us. I get up and walk to the edge of the clearing, thinking maybe it's a hunter or something. But there's no one. The sound stops when I get to the tree line. I walk back to the valve and it starts again. Junior's finished his cigarette, and he's just staring at his boots. I ask him if he's okay, and he doesn't answer right away. Then he says, "Travis, do you ever feel like the pipeline knows we're here?" I tell him not to talk like that. The line's just metal and gas. It doesn't know anything. But I feel it too. This awareness. Like the hum is listening to us. My phone buzzes. It's the supervisor, finally. His name's Mike Cheney. Real by the book guy. He says, "Travis, I'm looking at your report, and I need you to verify something for me. You said the valve is designated 6M, correct?" I confirm. He asks me to describe the casing again. I do. The rust color, the old stamped letters, the way it's set in concrete, that's cracked in these patterns, that look almost like writing. Cheney goes quiet for a long time. Then he says, "Travis, I'm going to be straight with you because you're a good hand. And I know you don't make stuff up. That valve doesn't exist in our system. It never has. The numbering sequence 6M was discontinued in 1987 after a pressure event that compromised that whole section. Those valves were supposed to be capped and welded shut 30 years ago." My blood goes cold. I ask him what kind of pressure event, and he says, "The records are sealed, Travis. All I can tell you is that Section M was supposed to be abandoned." You're telling me there's pressure on an abandoned line? I look at Junior, and he's not looking at me anymore. He's looking at the ground around the valve casing. There's water seeping up from the dirt, but it's not rained in weeks. We're in a drought. The ground is cracked dry everywhere else. This water is coming from right around the casing, pooling in the low spots. I touch it. It's warm. Cheney's still talking, saying we need to evacuate the area, that he's sending a hazmat team and a foreman who worked that section back in the day. But I can't leave. I mean, I know I should, but something keeps my feet planted. Junior stands up and walks over to the valve again. He puts his hand on the casing, and I tell him to get back. We don't know what's going on. He doesn't move. He just stands there with his palm flat on that rusted metal, and his eyes go blank. The hum changes. It gets words in it. Not English. Not any language I've heard. But I understand it somehow. It's saying wait for the circle. I don't know how I know that, but I do. It's wait for the circle. Over and over. Cheney's voice on the phone is distant now, like he's talking through water. Junior turns to me, and his face is wrong. Not like monster wrong. Just not Junior's face. The expression is all wrong. He's smiling, but his eyes are scared. Like he's trapped in there watching something else use his mouth. He says, "Travis, we need to open it more." I tell him absolutely not. We're leaving right now. I grab his arm, and he feels cold. Not just cool from the shade, but cold like he's been in a freezer. The humming gets louder, and now I can hear other voices in it. Men's voices, speaking Spanish. My Spanish is bad, but I catch words. Agua, fuego, muerte, water, fire, death. The boots on gravel sound is right behind me now. I spin around, and there's a shadow on the ground. Just a shadow, shaped like a man in a wide-brimmed hat. But there's no one casting it. The sun is directly overhead. There shouldn't be any shadows that long. Junior collapses. Just drops. Like someone cut his strings. I catch him, and he's heavy. Heavier than he should be. And he's burning up with fever. The radio crackles again, and it's my voice. But it's not me. It's me from some other time, some other day. And it's saying, "Don't let them finish the circle." Cheney is shouting through the phone now, but I can't make out the words. The water pooling around the valve is rising. It's up to my boots. The hum is so loud, it's making my teeth ache. I drag Junior back to the truck. He's conscious, but he's not there. He's mumbling about the sun and about how it's too bright for night. I tell him it's daytime. Man, it's noon. He looks at me and says, "Travis, why is the moon red?" There's no moon, just that white sun. I get him in the passenger seat and I run around to the driver's side. And that shadow is on the ground, right next to my door. It's not moving with the sun. It's just there, fixed in place. And it's pointing at the valve. Not with a hand. It's just shaped like it's pointing. I get in and I don't even buckle up. I just throw it in drive and I'm kicking up dust and pine needles. In the rear view, I see the water is spreading, dark circles in the dirt. And there's more shadows now. Dozens of them. Standing around that valve, like they're waiting for something. Junior's quiet in the seat next to me. I think he passed out. I get back to the main road, and my phone starts working again. 4 bars, and it's blowing up with missed calls from Cheney and from Linda, and from numbers I don't recognize. I pull into the first gas station I see, place out in Hillister, and I get Junior inside. He's awake now, but he's not talking, just staring at his hands. I buy him a Gatorade and he drinks it in one go. I call Cheney back and I tell him we're off site and Junior needs a doctor. Cheney says the hazmat team is mobilizing, but they need to know what they're walking into. I tell him, I don't know. I tell him there's water coming from the ground and shadows with no one casting them, and I heard my own voice on the radio. He goes quiet again. Then he says, "Travis, I'm sending you both home. Don't come back to the yard today. We'll talk tomorrow." I ask him about the valve, and he says it's not my concern anymore. That's it. Not my concern. Like I didn't just watch the ground bleed water, and my coworker turn into someone else. Junior's mom comes to get him. I stay with him until she arrives. She asks what happened, and I say, heat exhaustion. I don't know why I lie. I just know I can't say the words. She takes him home, and I sit in my truck in that gas station parking lot for an hour. I call my own mom, just to hear a normal voice. She's watching her soaps, and she puts me on speaker while she folds laundry. It's so normal I want to cry. I go home. I live in a single wide out on FM 418, just past the church, with the broken sign. I shower for 40 minutes. The water is hot, and I can still feel that cold from Junior's arm on my palm. I try to eat, but I'm not hungry. I sit in my recliner, and I turn on the TV, but I'm not watching it. I'm listening for that hum. Around 9 that night, my phone rings. It's Junior. I answer, and there's just static. Then, that hum, that same hum from the valve. I hang up and call him back, but it goes straight to voicemail. I text him. He responds with just one word. Circle. I call Cheney at home. His wife answers, says he's still at the office. I try his cell, and he picks up on the first ring. He sounds exhausted. He says, "Travis, where are you?" I tell him I'm home. He says, "Good, stay there. We're shutting down Section M, all of it, from here to the Louisiana border." I ask him why, and he says, "Because you were right. That valve shouldn't exist." Then he hangs up. I don't sleep that night. I sit in my kitchen with all the lights on, and I listen to my neighbor's dog bark. But it's not barking at nothing anymore. It's barking at the same rhythm as that hum. I hear it in the walls. I hear it in the pipes. The next day I'm supposed to be off, but I go into the yard anyway. Cheney's there, and he pulls me into his office. He closes the door, and he shows me a file. It's old, typewritten pages with faded ink. The header says, Incident Report, Section M, June 1987. He says, "I had to pull strings to get this. It's classified under company seal." I ask him what happened in 87. He says, "They lost a crew, all 5 hands, vanished. They were doing routine maintenance on that same valve, the one you found. It was designated 6M then. After they disappeared, The company welded it shut, poured concrete over it, and erased it from the maps. The official story was a pressure blowout that vaporized the bodies, but there's no blast damage, no crater, no evidence of any explosion. I ask him what the unofficial story is. He slides a photograph across the desk. It's black and white. Shows 5 men in hard hats standing next to a valve casing. The casing says 6M. Behind them, in the trees, there are shadows. Dozens of shadows. No people, just shadows. Cheney says, the foreman on that crew was my uncle. He was the only one who made it back. He quit the next day and moved to Oklahoma. Wouldn't talk about it. Died last year. In his attic, they found a journal. He wrote about hearing voices in Spanish, about water coming from dry ground, about shadows that stood still while the sun moved. I ask him what happened to the crew. He says, the journal just says they opened the valve, and then they were gone. I get up to leave, and Cheney stops me. He says, Travis, I need you to forget about this, for your own good. The company is paying you for a full week of hazard leave. Go fishing. Go see your mom. But don't think about that valve. I nod, because what else can I do? But I can't forget. I go home and I try to watch TV, but the humming is in my head now. It's always there, just below everything. I call Junior. His mom answers. She says he's sleeping. She says the doctor said it was dehydration and maybe a panic attack. She says he's been saying things in his sleep. In Spanish. Neither of them speak Spanish. I hang up and I pack a bag. I drive to my mom's place in Beaumont. She makes me dinner and I eat it and I sleep in my old bedroom. The humming is quieter there, but it's still there. I stay for 3 days. On the 4th day, Cheney calls. He says they sealed the site, poured new concrete, welded the cap, put up new markers. He says the hazmat team didn't find anything. No water, no shadows, no voices. He says, it's like you were never there, Travis. The ground is dry. I ask him about the pressure reading, and he says the gauge must have been faulty. I want to believe him. I really do, but I know what I saw. I know what I heard. I go back to work the next week. They put me on Pipeline 12, way up in the Panhandle. Different crew, different supervisor. I don't see Junior again. He quits 2 weeks later, moves to Florida. His mom tells me. Wants to be near the ocean. I think about that a lot. How he wanted to be near water. I think about the water that came from that dry dirt. I think about how it was warm. I think about how it felt alive. I keep working. I keep welding. I keep my head down. But every time I'm on a job and I see a valve casing, I have to check the number. Every time I hear static on a radio, I flinch. Every time I hear boots on gravel, I turn around. There's this one night, about a month after it happened. I'm working a night shift on a line near Lubbock. It's just me and this old hand named Frank. We're waiting on a pressure test and it's midnight, and we're sitting in the truck with the heat on because the desert gets cold at night. Frank's telling me about his grandkids, and the radio crackles. It's that same wet crackle. Then my voice comes through. It says, check the upstream side. Frank doesn't hear it. He keeps talking about his granddaughter's soccer game. But I hear it. And I know it's not a recording, it's me, but it's not me now. It's me from that day. It's like time folded over. And that moment is still happening somewhere. And the radio is just a door that lets the sound through. I excuse myself to use the bathroom, which is just the side of the truck, because we're in the middle of nowhere. And I throw up. Frank asks if I'm okay. And I tell him it's just something I ate, but it's not. It's something I heard. It's something I opened. Because I keep thinking about what Cheney said. They opened the valve. In '87. They opened it. And they were gone. We didn't open it. Junior touched it, but we didn't open it. But I keep thinking about that shadow that pointed. I keep thinking about how it wanted us to open it. And I keep thinking about that hum. Wait, I forgot to tell you about the pattern. That's important. The pattern in the concrete. I didn't notice it at first, but when I was dragging Junior back to the truck, I saw it. The cracks in the concrete pad around the valve. They weren't random. They made a shape. A circle, with these lines radiating out from the center like spokes. And in between the spokes were these marks. These little hash marks. Like someone had been counting something. Years, maybe. Or days. I don't know. But it was perfect. Too perfect to be accidental. Cheney said they poured new concrete. I wonder if the pattern is still there. I wonder if you can pour enough concrete to cover up something that wants to be seen. I wonder if the ground remembers. Because that's what it feels like. Like the ground out there remembers something, and that valve is just a mouth that wants to speak. The hum is a voice. The water is a tongue. The shadows are just waiting for someone to listen. I'm not a smart man. I didn't finish college. I work with my hands because I like making things that hold together. I like welding because it's simple. You clean the metal, you strike the arc, you lay the bead. It either holds or it doesn't. There's no mystery. But this is different. This is a thing that doesn't follow rules. This is a place that shouldn't be a place. The other day I was at the grocery store in Silsby, just getting milk and bread, and I heard a kid humming in the cereal aisle. Same note. Same exact pitch as that valve. I dropped my milk. The lady at the checkout asked if I was okay, and I just left the cart there and walked out. I don't go to that store anymore. I drive 15 minutes out of my way to go to the H-E-B in Beaumont instead. I don't tell people why. I just say I like their produce better. But it's because of the humming. It's everywhere now. I hear it in the AC unit at night. I hear it in the fan at work. I hear it in the way the wind blows through the pine trees. It's a language I can't unlearn. And the Spanish. I never spoke Spanish before, but now I understand it when I hear it. Not all of it, but certain words. Agua, fuego, muerte, circle. Wait for the circle. That's what the hum was saying. Wait for the circle. I looked it up. In Spanish, circle is circulo, but I didn't need to look it up. I already knew. Like the valve taught me. Like it put the word in my head. Junior called me last week. From Florida. I almost didn't answer because it was a number I didn't recognize, but something told me to pick up. He says, "Travis, I need to tell you something." His voice is different. Flat. He says, "I found a valve on the beach. It's got no number, just a letter, just an M." I tell him to get away from it, to call the cops, to call someone. He says, "It's too late, man. I already touched it, and it's humming." Then the line goes dead. I tried calling back, but the number is disconnected. I called his mom. She says he's still in Florida. She talked to him yesterday. He sounds fine. He's working at a hotel on the beach. I don't tell her what he said. I don't tell her about the valve. I just ask her to have him call me. He hasn't called. I think about flying out there. I think about driving to Florida and finding him and making sure he's okay. But I'm scared. I'm scared because what if he's not Junior anymore? What if he's like those shadows? What if he's just waiting for the circle to complete? Cheney retired last month. They had a little party for him at the yard. I didn't go. I heard from Frank that he moved to Arizona, bought a place out in the desert where there aren't any pipelines for 100 miles. That's what Frank said. Cheney told him he was tired of the company, tired of the politics, but I think he was tired of something else. I think he was tired of knowing what was under the ground. I think he was tired of hearing the hum. I got a letter in the mail yesterday. No return address. Postmarked. From Oklahoma. Inside was a single photograph. It's old, black and white, shows a valve casing with 6M stamped on it. On the back, in pencil, it says, "My uncle told me to send this to the last man who touched it. He said you'd understand." I do understand. I understand that some things you touch and they touch you back. Some doors you open and you can't close them again. Not really. The valve is still out there. I know Cheney said they sealed it, but I drove past the turnoff last week. I know I shouldn't have, but I did. I didn't go down the service road, but I could see the marker from the highway. It's still there. And the concrete pad, it's bigger now. They poured more concrete, but the circle is still visible. You can see it from the road if you know what you're looking for. It's like a scar. I called the company. I talked to the new supervisor. I asked about Section M. He said it's still offline, permanently. He said there's a note in the file that says, "Do not service. Do not approach. Do not investigate." I asked him why. He said he doesn't know. He said some things you just don't question. But I question it. I question it every night when I'm trying to sleep. And I hear that hum in the walls. I question it every time I see a shadow that doesn't move right. I question it every time I hear Spanish on the radio and I understand words I shouldn't know. I don't work night shifts anymore. I put in for day work only. The money's less, but I don't care. I can't be out there in the dark. Because in the dark, the hum is louder. In the dark, the shadows have more places to hide. In the dark, you can't see the water coming up from the ground until it's already at your boots. My mom asks me why I don't come around as much. I tell her I'm busy. I tell her I'm working a lot. But the truth is I'm scared to be around people. I'm scared I'll start humming that note and they'll hear it. I'm scared I'll start speaking Spanish and I won't be able to stop. I'm scared I'll see that look on someone's face like Junior had. That look like they're not behind their own eyes anymore. The other day at work, Frank asked me what happened out on Section M. He said Cheney told him before he left that I saw something I shouldn't have. I told Frank it was nothing. Just a faulty gauge. But he looked at me like he knew I was lying. He put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Travis, some things we bury for a reason." Then he walked away. I think about that a lot. Some things we bury for a reason. But what if the ground forgets? What if the ground decides it wants to give it back? I looked up the history of that area. Before the pipeline, before the paper mill, there was nothing. Just forest. But before that, there was a town. A little settlement from the 1800s that just disappeared one year. The records say it was a fever. The records say everyone died and the buildings rotted away. But there's no graveyard. There's no marker. There's just a blank spot on the map where a town used to be. I think about that. I think about how maybe the ground doesn't forget. Maybe it just waits. Maybe it puts a valve there, a mouth, and it hums its story to anyone who'll listen. I don't know. I'm just a welder. I don't know about these things, but I know what I heard. I know what I felt. I know that Junior's somewhere in Florida, touching valves that shouldn't exist, and humming that same note. I know that Cheney's in Arizona trying to outrun shadows. I know that I'm sitting here in my trailer at 3 a.m. talking into my phone because if I don't say it out loud, I'm going to forget who I am. I'm going to forget which voice is mine and which voice is the one from the radio. I'm going to forget whether it's day or night. I'm going to forget whether I'm Travis Kowalski from Silsbee, Texas, or whether I'm just another shadow waiting for the circle to complete. Listen, I'm telling you this because you need to know. If you ever hear a hum that won't stop, if you ever see a valve that doesn't have the right numbers, if you ever hear your own voice telling you to do something you don't remember saying, you run. You don't call dispatch. You don't document it. You don't wait for the supervisor. You run and you don't look back. Because some doors open from both sides. And that valve, that humming, that circle in the concrete, it's a door. And I think I left it open. I think when I touched that casing, I left a piece of myself there. And I think it's still there. Still listening. Still humming. And I think it's waiting for someone else to come along and finish what we started. What they started in '87. What that settlement started 100 years before that. The circle isn't complete. That's what the hum is saying. It's counting. Counting down. Or counting up. I can't tell which, but it's counting. And when it gets to whatever number it's waiting for, something's going to happen. Something that should have happened a long time ago. I don't work nights anymore. I don't go near Section M. I don't answer calls from numbers I don't know. But it doesn't matter, because the valve is in my head now. The hum is my pulse. The shadows are in the corners of my vision. The Spanish words are in my dreams. I'm contaminated. I'm marked. I'm waiting for the circle just like everything else. I don't know what to do. I called a priest. He came out to the trailer and he prayed with me. He said I was just stressed. He said there was no such thing as haunted pipelines. He said the mind plays tricks. But when he left, I saw his shadow stay behind for just a second too long. Like it didn't want to go with him. Like it wanted to stay and listen to the hum. I don't answer the door anymore. I keep the lights on. I play music loud enough to drown out the sound, but I can still hear it. It's in the bass line. It's in the static between songs. It's in the whine of the refrigerator. It's in the buzz of the light bulbs. It's everything. It's the sound of the ground remembering. It's the sound of the circle closing. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to open anything. I was just doing my job. I was just checking a pressure anomaly. I was just trying to get back to the yard in time for lunch. I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't know. But now I do. And I can't unknow it. And I can't unhear it. And I can't stop waiting for the moment when the hum becomes a word I understand completely. When the shadows become solid. When the water comes up from the dry ground again. I'm telling you this because maybe if I say it enough, if I confess it enough, it will let me go. Maybe the circle needs silence. Maybe it needs secrets. Maybe, by speaking it, I'm breaking it. Or maybe I'm just another voice in the choir, another note in the hum, another shadow waiting for the sun to move. I don't know. I'm just a welder. I'm just Travis Kowalski from Silsby. I'm just a man who touched something he shouldn't have touched. And now I'm waiting. We're all waiting. The whole state is waiting if you know how to listen. The pipelines run everywhere. They connect everything. And somewhere, underneath it all, there's a hum. And it's counting. And it's waiting for the circle. And I don't know what happens when the circle completes. But I know I don't want to be here when it does. I don't want to be anywhere when it does. But I can't leave. I've tried. I drove to Dallas last month, stayed with my cousin, and in his apartment, on the 10th floor, I heard it in the plumbing. That same note, that same hum. It's in the water system. It's in the gas lines. It's in the telephone wires. It's in the air itself. You can't outrun something that's already inside you. You can't escape something that knows your voice. I'm marked. I'm contaminated. I'm waiting. And I'm telling you this because maybe you can do something. Maybe you can tell someone who knows how to close a door that opens from both sides. Maybe you can find Junior before he opens the one in Florida. Maybe you can find Cheney and ask him what his uncle really said. Maybe you can go out to Section M and pour more concrete. Or maybe you can just listen. Just put your ear to the ground and listen. You'll hear it. If you're quiet enough. If you're alone enough. If you're scared enough. You'll hear the hum. You'll hear the counting. You'll hear the circle. And then you'll know. You'll know like I know. You'll know that some things aren't meant to be found. Some valves aren't meant to be touched. Some circles aren't meant to be completed. I'm going to stop talking now. My throat hurts. My head hurts. My chest hurts. Everything hurts. I'm going to try to sleep, but I know I won't, because the hum is louder when it's dark. And it's dark now. It's so dark, and I'm so tired. But I can't sleep, because I'm afraid that if I close my eyes, I'll wake up somewhere else. Somewhere with rust-colored concrete, and warm water, and shadows that don't move. Somewhere with a valve that has my name on it. Somewhere where I'm just another voice in the hum. Just another note in the song. Just another shadow waiting for the circle. Good night. Or good morning. Or whatever this is. I don't know what time it is anymore. The clock in my trailer is broken. The numbers don't make sense. Nothing makes sense. Except the hum. The hum makes perfect sense. It's saying, wait. It's saying the circle is almost complete. It's saying, Travis, you should have run faster. I hear you. I hear you. I'm listening. I'm always listening now.